Chapter 344. When the elegant young master saw Leng Shiqi, he paused for a moment. However, he immediately calmed down and continued walking forward. Don't look back on worldly affairs. Who knew that Leng Shiqi would say this? The elegant young master turned his head in surprise. This young master is rather elegant. It's a pity that it's already late. Otherwise, I would like to recite poems with you. Leng Shiqi smiled coldly. With a wave of his hand, several figures quickly swept past and surrounded the elegant young master. There were also 4 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators who stood beside him. Mo Huisho, your disguise is indeed exquisite. However, there are many people who are good at it in the Dark Thunder Guards. Do you think that you can hide from the eyes of the Dark Thunder Guards with this little ability of yours? You shouldn't have targeted me in the first place. Leng Shiqi said indifferently. The elegant young master's gaze flickered. He shrugged his shoulders and said, as expected of the Dark Thunder Guards, as expected of the supervisor. You guys actually saw through the flaw. The clumsy arrangement in the Dark Thunder Manor was intentional. It was to lure me out. That's pretty smart. However, so what? Do you think you can keep me here with just these few people? Or do you have the confidence to capture a Spirit Aperture Realm cultivator? Leng Shiqi's brows furrowed. With his strength and a few Dark Thunder Guards, he could indeed barely deal with a Spirit Aperture Realm cultivator at the initial stage. However, being able to fight and being able to capture were 2 different things. However, just as Leng Shiqi furrowed his brows, Mo Huisho's figure suddenly turned into a phantom and fled. It was as if the Dark Thunder Guards surrounding him didn't exist. They couldn't stop him at all. Oh no! Leng Shiqi knew that things weren't good. He hurriedly shouted, "Chase!" He immediately led everyone to chase after him. However, Mo Huisho's speed was extremely fast. He was the fastest among all the people he had fought. After a while, Mo Huisho turned into a small alley. He smiled proudly. You guys purposely lured me out. However, you didn't know that I was also trying to lure you out. Soon after, a faint black aura rose from his body. When the black aura dissipated, his figure disappeared again. Leng Shiqi quickly arrived with his men, but there was no one in sight. According to common sense, he should be frowning, but now there was a strange smile on his face. He took the bait. Qiu Qing stepped forward. Right now, only Lord and Qin Jianchen are in Dark Thunder Manor. Will there be any problems? Leng Shiqi glanced at him and said, are you questioning His Excellency's strength? Qiu Cheng's face stiffened, and he said with a slightly angry tone, I'm just worried about the safety of my lord. Leng Shiqi did not pay much attention to him. Instead, he turned around and left, leaving behind a sentence. Then why don't you hurry back and help His Excellency? Qiu Cheng felt a little uncomfortable. He knew that the Leng Shiqi in front of him was not Leng Shiqi, but Qian Ming. In Qiu Cheng's impression, Qian Ming was initially more respectful and modest. However, as he slowly familiarized himself with and gained some power, he gradually did not put Qiu Cheng in his eyes. However, Qian Ming was indeed very skilled. His disguising skills were unparalleled in Dark Thunder Manor. In order to capture Mo Huisho tonight, he played a crucial role. Even though Qiu Cheng was a little dissatisfied with his attitude, he did not dare to cause trouble in case he messed up the plan. He secretly gritted his teeth and followed with his men. At this moment, in Dark Thunder Manor, Leng Shiqi hurriedly walked into the meeting hall. However, his footsteps stopped the moment he entered the hall. He said, "Come out, Mo Huisho has already escaped." A person walked out from the shadows of the meeting hall. He hugged a thin sword. It was Ghost Sword Qin Jianchen. Qin Jianchen had always been a man of few words. He just stood there silently. Leng Shiqi asked, "Is there anything wrong with the supervisory seal?" Qin Jianchen shook his head slightly. Leng Shiqi walked forward and said, "It said that Mo Huisho's methods are strange. It's better to confirm it." As he spoke, he picked up the box containing the supervisory seal as if he wanted to check it. However, the moment he picked up the box, something unexpected happened. He did not hear the sound of a long sword being unsheathed. A thin sword had already stabbed towards Leng Shiqi like a ghost. What a fast sword! Leng Shiqi did not expect Qin Jianchen to suddenly attack. This sword was very fast, so fast that he could not dodge it at all. With a wung sound, a huge amount of spiritual power surged out from Leng Shiqi's body and instantly formed a protective spiritual armor. Qin Jianshan's sword looked simple and unadorned, but it hid a terrifying power and killing intent. His sword actually pierced through the protective spiritual armor in an instant. However, the protective spiritual armor had at least bought half a breath of time. Leng Shiqi's body twisted like a snake and narrowly avoided the sword. Qin Jianshan's sword shook and a wave of sword qi with a deathly aura shot out and entered Leng Shiqi's body. Leng Shiqi tapped his feet on the ground and retreated several hundred feet away. He stared at Qin Jianshan in shock. Qin Jianshan's cultivation was only at the late stage of the spirit pulse realm, but his sword was abnormally terrifying. Not only did it easily pierce through his protective spiritual armor, the deathly sword qi was also corroding his flesh like maggots. Qin Jianshan said with a bit of sarcasm, "So my lord has already broken through to the spirit aperture realm." Leng Shiqi knew that he had already been exposed when he appeared here, but he did not know how he had been exposed. Everything that happened tonight seemed to be out of his control. At this moment, the ground under his feet suddenly made a caw-caw sound. The ground in the courtyard of Dark Thunder Manor cracked and rays of dazzling golden light shone out from the cracks. Immediately after, a golden sun broke through the ground, as if a sun had risen in the night sky. Rank 5 Spiritual Technique, Bright Sun Mystic Yang Palm. A figure rose up with the sun in his hand. There was a blood mark on his forehead. It was Leng Shiqi, the real Leng Shiqi. The sun was fierce and everything was revealed. The other Leng Shiqi took off the disguise on her body and revealed an exquisite figure. However, this person's face was covered with a mask. This was Emo Huaishou. What was unexpected was that Emo Huaishou was actually a woman. Emo Huaishou would never have thought that Leng Shiqi had been hiding underground for a long time to find an opportunity to give her a fierce attack. Although Leng Shiqi was still at the 9th level of the Spirit Pulse realm, he had already opened up 42 Spirit Pulses. In addition, with the support of several profound techniques and mutated spiritual energy, his attack was not inferior to a Spirit Aperture realm's attack. Emo Huaishou's palm continuously moved and shot out rays of green light. If one looked carefully, the green light was actually filled with small insects. Those small insects looked extremely weak, but each of them could actually swallow the light of the bright sun mystic yang palm. In the blink of an eye, more than half of Leng Shiqi's palm energy was swallowed. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi's heart moved and he said in surprise, "Gu technique. You are from Zhulu country." Chapter 345. As Leng Shiqi had to make a trip to Zhu Road country soon, he took some time to look at the information regarding Zhu Road country and the 6 Western region countries. The Gu technique was a peculiar cultivation method unique to the 6 kingdoms of the Western region. But among the 6 countries of the Western region, Zhulu country was famous for its Gu techniques because there was a Gu god sect in Zhulu country that specialized in cultivating Gu techniques. This Gu god sect was even worshipped as the national religion in Zhu Road country. According to the division of power, it was considered a first-rate power. Therefore, when Leng Shiqi saw Emo Huaishou use the Gu technique, his first reaction was that she was from Zhu Road country. Leng Shiqi roared, "The dynasty strictly forbids spirit cultivators above the spirit aperture realm from the 6 Western region countries to enter. Zhu Road country sure has guts. Do you really think there's no one in our dynasty? Do you really think there's no one in the Dark Thunder Guards?" At this moment he really had the intention to kill. No matter what Emo Huaishou's motive was for coming to Lanqi City, and no matter how she sneaked in, she had indeed violated the Thunder Flame dynasty's ban. As long as he killed her, he could pin the crime of being a spy, which would be a great contribution. Of course, it would be best if he could capture her alive. However, Leng Shiqi still had some self-awareness. With just him and Qin Jianshan, they did have a chance to kill Emo Huaishou, but it was impossible to capture her alive. Emo Huaishou was also helpless. She was sneak attacked by Leng Shiqi's glorious sun mysterious sun palm, and had no choice but to use the spirit-devouring Gu to defend. The spirit-devouring Gu could devour a large amount of spiritual energy in a short period of time, and was the nemesis of various spiritual techniques. However, there was a limit to the amount of spiritual energy that each spirit-devouring gu could withstand. Leng Shiqi's glorious sun, mysterious sun palm, was at the Great Circle realm. When he used it, it was extremely powerful, and was not weaker than the initial stage of the spirit aperture realm. One by one, the spirit-devouring gu exploded from the huge amount of spiritual energy, but the glorious sun was also quickly fading. Emo Huisho's heart ached. The spirit-devouring gu was extremely difficult to cultivate. It could be said that each one was extremely precious, but in the blink of an eye, dozens of them died. What gave her a headache was that she had exposed her identity. Because of this, from now on, it would be difficult for her to move around the western desolate province. Unbeknownst to her, a pitch-black sword ray quietly pierced towards her. The speed of the sword ray was unimaginably fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived before her. It was Qin Jianchen. Emo Huisho coldly snorted. 2 balls of dark green light condensed in her hands, which rippled with dense poisonous gas. She clapped her hands together, and 2 balls of green light shot out toward Qin Jianchen and Leng Shiqi respectively. Leng Shiqi shouted, "Retreat!" Qin Jianchen's sword attack came to a halt, and he was forced to retreat. Immediately after, 2 huge explosions resounded in the courtyard of Dark Thunder Manor. It could be heard clearly even from miles away. Qianming, Qiucheng, and the other 3 Dark Lightning envoys were on their way here. They clearly felt the aura of the explosion. Their bodies paused for a moment as they revealed looks of shock. Then they sped up even faster. The green light in the courtyard was tyrannical. Violent spiritual energy blasted out, overturning all the houses and floor tiles in the courtyard. From the ashes of the huge explosion, a figure wearing demonic armor walked out. Leng Shiqi had activated the demonic beast blood rune armor at the crucial moment. Even so, cracks began to appear on the armor. It was obvious how terrifying the explosion was. As for Qin Jianchen, although he had retreated in time, the power of the explosion was too great. At this moment, the skin and flesh on his back were rolled up, and there was a faint green light corroding his flesh. Leng Shiqi's eyes flashed with a shocking murderous intent. However, when he lifted his foot, he realized that he had stepped on something that was unusually sticky. He lowered his head and saw that the ground was actually covered with spider webs. These spider webs were not very tough, but they were very sticky, making it difficult for people to move. And that Emo Huisho was long gone. Leng Shiqi frowned. He had put in a lot of effort to set up this trap tonight. Emo Huisho's disguise was indeed brilliant, and he was not inferior to Thousand Face. However, in Leng Shiqi's eyes, nothing could be hidden. No matter how much you changed your appearance and voice, you could not change the spiritual energy in your body. Leng Shiqi had long memorized the spiritual energy of everyone in Dark Thunder Manor. The moment Emo Huisho entered Dark Thunder Manor, he already knew. The reason why he did not act rashly was that he also realized that Emo Huisho had a powerful movement spiritual technique that was similar to teleportation. That was why he created a fake Leng Shiqi show. However, now that he knew that Emo Huisho was most likely from Zhulu country, destroyed Dark Thunder Manor's courtyard, and injured his subordinates, his heart was filled with murderous intent. At this moment he heard footsteps. It was Guan Feihong and the rest who had returned. Leng Shiqi removed his demonic beast blood rune armor. Guan Feihong ran to the front and asked anxiously, "Sir, are you okay?" Leng Shiqi shook his head and said, "I'm fine." Qin Jianchen, on the other hand, suffered heavy injuries. Quickly take him away for treatment. Use the best resources. The few of them also saw Qin Jianchen's injuries and hurriedly sent people to take him away. Guan Feihong looked at the spider webs and traces of dead spirit-devouring parasites on the ground. His expression changed slightly as he asked, "Sir, these seem to be traces of Gu techniques." "That's right." Leng Shiqi nodded and said, "That Emo Huisho is proficient in Gu techniques. He is most likely from Zhulu country. A spirit aperture realm expert proficient in Gu techniques. Emo Huisho is most likely from the Gu God sect. Only the Gu God sect can cultivate such a Gu expert." Guan Feihong's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise as he said in a deep voice. Leng Shiqi glanced at Guan Feihong. He seemed to know a lot about the Gu God sect. Xiao Qian took the supervisory seal from the meeting room. He let out a sigh of relief and said, "Sir, the supervisory seal is still here." Leng Shiqi picked up the supervisory seal and carefully looked at it a few times. After confirming that it wasn't swapped, he nodded. The supervisory seal wasn't lost, which meant that he didn't lose his face. If Mo Huisho really took away the supervisory seal, then he wouldn't be able to face anyone anymore. Of course, he didn't plan to let Mo Huisho go so easily. However, he thought about it again. He didn't have to fight to the death with Mo Huisho. His thoughts turned quickly. In the past, Mo Huisho was probably someone who took pleasure in stealing. After all, she didn't steal anything especially precious. However, now that Leng Shiqi knew that she was from Zhulu country, everything changed. What was Mo Huisho's motive for doing this? Also, he had just ruined Zhulu country's plan to collect large amounts of fine iron, and Mo Huisho came to Lanqi City right after. Was this just a coincidence? Following that, Leng Shiqi said a few words and returned to his room. He also instructed that no one was allowed to disturb him. Then he activated the Fate skill. Chapter 346. Mo Huisho was like a night elf as she sped through Mystichi City. What was even stranger was that she would transform into a different person every time she passed by a place. One moment she was a young girl, the next moment she was a young man. If one looked closely, they would realize that she relied on the mask on her face to change her appearance. Soon, Mo Huisho left Mystichi City without being noticed by all the guards. The reason she came to Mystichi City was to investigate Jill's collection of iron essence and meet Leng Shiqi at the same time. She wanted to meet this person who single-handedly destroyed the profound Yang sect and ruined Zhulugua's plan. Who would have thought that her probing would actually expose her own identity? But in that situation, if she didn't use her Gu arts, she would definitely be injured. This was also because Leng Shiqi and Qin Jianqin's abilities were far beyond her expectations. How would she have thought that two people in the spiritual pulse realm would have such powerful abilities? What she needed to do now was to leave the Western Desolate Province before the news spread. Otherwise, once the news of her identity spread, it would be very difficult to leave the Thunderflame dynasty. But when she passed through the forest several kilometers away from Mystichi City, she saw red, blue, and yellow lights suddenly blossoming in the sky. A figure walked out of the lights. Mo Huisho's figure stopped abruptly. Her eyes focused. This person was wearing a large black cloak and a mask on his face. There was chaos on the mask. She knew that this person was coming for her, and he didn't come with good intentions. This person was naturally Leng Shiqi, who was wearing his own mask. He activated the Fate skill and locked onto Mo Huisho's aura and figure, directly teleporting over. Mo Huisho saw that Leng Shiqi's cultivation was only in the spiritual pulse realm, so she took the initiative to attack. Her hands moved quickly and purple poisonous gas rose. Leng Shiqi's white eyes under his mask could clearly see that this wasn't poisonous gas. This was clearly a combination of countless tiny goo worms. If he accidentally inhaled some, the consequences would be unimaginable. He grasped the air in his hand, and a rank 4 spirit sword appeared. Suddenly, hundreds of sword chi surged out like the birth of the sun, sweeping in all directions. The scorching sword chi instantly broke through 80% of the poison gas. This was the rank 4 spiritual skill, Shaoyang sword chi. Mo Huisho was secretly bewildered, but Leng Shiqi pointed with his left hand. With a boom, a blood-red lightning shot out. That blood-colored thunderbolt was actually a perfect fusion of the rich blood chi and the tyrannical power of lightning. It disappeared in the blink of an eye. Mo Huisho was shocked. She shook the bell on her wrist. Instantly, dozens of goo worms of different colors came out of her body and rushed towards the blood-colored lightning. Among these goo worms were the spirit-devouring goo that Leng Shiqi had seen before. In an instant, the blood-red lightning shattered most of the goo worms, but it was blocked by the goo worms in the end. The remaining goo worms continued to fly towards Leng Shiqi. He used his palm as a blade and slashed down. A blazing flame blade slashed out and swallowed the goo worms. At this moment, Leng Shiqi changed his voice and said, Mo Huisho, I have no ill intentions. I'm just here to make a deal with you. Mo Huishou's movements paused. She and Leng Shiqi had only exchanged 2 or 3 moves, and she felt that Leng Shiqi was very difficult to deal with. Furthermore, she saw that Leng Shiqi didn't even use his full strength, but he was still able to fight her to a standstill. This already gave him the right to talk to her as an equal. However, Mo Huishou couldn't help but feel embarrassed and angry. Tonight, she had met Qin Jianchen, Lu Xingji, and this mysterious person in front of her. They were all existences that could fight against Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators, while being in the Spirit Pulse Realm. She couldn't help but sigh. The Thunderblaze dynasty was indeed full of talents. On the other hand, her Zhulu country was always lacking in talents. She didn't connect Lu Xingji with Leng Shiqi, because in the Dark Thunder manner, Leng Shiqi used the Glorious Sun Mysterious Yang Palm, which was a metal elemental technique. However, Leng Shiqi was currently using a fire elemental technique. The two were completely different, so Mo Huishou didn't think that these two people could be the same person. Mo Huishou's thoughts turned rapidly. She didn't have the confidence to kill Leng Shiqi. If she really fought to the death, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. This place was only a few miles away from Misty Chi City, and she was definitely on the Dark Thunder Guard's blacklist. Once someone found her here, she would probably never be able to return. Mo Huishou lowered her voice and said, "Tell me." The corner of Leng Shiqi's mouth lifted slightly under his mask. He had already guessed that Mo Huishou would be like this. He said, "Mo Huishou, now that your identity has been exposed, you should know that the Dark Thunder Guards have a sound transmission array. If there are no accidents, your information should have already spread throughout the entire West Desolate Province. Take advantage of the fact that the Dark Thunder Guards and the various city guards haven't been mobilized yet. This is your last chance to escape from the West Desolate Province. Therefore, with every moment you stay here, your chances of survival will decrease." Mo Huishou knew that Leng Shiqi was not lying, but it still made her feel uncertain. She thought to herself, "My identity was only exposed not long ago. How did he know? Could it be that he's a member of the Dark Thunder Guards? Or was he hiding near the Dark Thunder residence just now?" However, she didn't have much time to think carefully, so she said even more anxiously, "Then why are you still talking nonsense?" Leng Shiqi laughed secretly. Mo Huishou's state of mind was no longer calm. As long as her state of mind was unstable, she would reveal her flaws. In fact, what he said just now was all a lie. It was true that the Dark Thunder Guards had a sound transmission array, but he didn't expose this matter. He wanted to trick Mo Huishou and gain more benefits. Leng Shiqi put on an unfathomable expression and said, "I can pretend that I didn't see you, and even help you cover up the news and let you leave the West Desolate Province smoothly. Don't doubt my words. My identity is far from what you can imagine. If I say I can do it, then I can do it." Mo Huishou naturally didn't believe everything in her heart, but Leng Shiqi's words did move her a little. She gritted her teeth and said, "Then what do you want?" "Cultivation techniques." Leng Shiqi said these 2 words. "I'm very interested in your Gu techniques. As long as you give me a few rank 4 cultivation techniques related to Gu techniques, I can guarantee that you can leave the West Desolate Province." Leng Shiqi's words weren't a lie. He was really interested in Gu techniques. Moreover, he had already opened up all the spirit veins that could be opened up, and he urgently needed cultivation techniques to open up the remaining spirit veins. Therefore, he set his sights on Mo Huishou. Mo Huishou chuckled when she heard this. "So you've taken a fancy to my cultivation techniques. Not to mention that cultivation techniques are secrets that can't be passed on. I might as well tell you the truth. My cultivation techniques require the use of Gu worms. Unfortunately, only Zhu Lugua knows how to cultivate Gu worms, so even if I give you the cultivation techniques, you won't be able to cultivate them." Leng Shiqi shook his head. "You don't have to worry about this. You can take your time to think about it. If you drag on for too long, even I won't be able to suppress your information." Chapter 347. Mo Huishou was furious, but she couldn't do anything. Leng Shiqi had her in a tight grip. She couldn't kill Leng Shiqi in a short period of time. She could ignore Leng Shiqi and escape, but Leng Shiqi wouldn't let her escape so easily. Moreover, just like what Leng Shiqi said, her information had already spread throughout the western desolate province. The longer she delayed, the stricter the defense at the border would be. Even the city guards and dark lightning guards of each city would be looking for her. By then, she wouldn't be able to escape even if she had wings. However, the cultivation technique she cultivated was a secret technique of the Gu God sect. It couldn't be spread to outsiders. If this matter was spread, she would be taken away by the sect leader to refine Gu. Thousands of thoughts flashed through her mind. Finally, she decided to give it a try. Escape. Emo Huisho's body flashed with green light. Her figure turned into a green light and flew across the night sky. Leng Shiqi snorted coldly as a silver-white cloak suddenly appeared behind him. Using the ghostly spring steps, he transformed into a black and white stream of light and shot out. His speed was slightly faster than Emo Huisho's. The ghostly spring steps was a combination of 3 movement techniques. In terms of rank, it was at least comparable to a 5th-level technique. Coupled with the Holy Silver Deer's Beast Origin Battle Rune, his speed was slightly faster than Emo Huisho, who was at the Spirit Aperture Realm. Emo Huisho naturally saw Leng Shiqi chasing after her. She sighed in her heart and stopped. She knew that if Leng Shiqi attacked, he would definitely be able to hold her here. Her plan to escape would be completely ruined. At the same time, she was secretly surprised. The person in front of her was only at the Spirit Pulse Realm, but his battle strength was comparable to the Spirit Aperture Realm. Even his speed was so terrifying. This person's identity must not be simple. She began to doubt Leng Shiqi's words. Emo Huisho, you still haven't given up? My patience is limited, and so is your time. I don't have time to waste with you. I will only give you 3 breaths of time to consider. After 3 breaths of time, if you do not agree to give me the cultivation method, I will turn around and leave. I will then wait for the news of your execution. Leng Shiqi's voice was as cold as a 1,000-year-old ice cave. Emo Huisho had never met such a difficult person. Although her cultivation was high, she was not confident that she could kill Leng Shiqi in a short period of time. Even if she ran away, her speed was not as fast as Leng Shiqi. She would still be trapped here. Her only choice now was to make a deal. Emo Huisho couldn't help but feel a little anxious. However, she recalled what Leng Shiqi had said before. She rolled her eyes and said, I promise you. However, she suddenly changed the topic. However, how can I trust you? Leng Shiqi said coldly, you are still wasting time. If you don't trust me, we can go our separate ways. Emo Huisho was obviously not satisfied with such an answer. Her eyes hidden under the mask kept flickering, as if she was hesitating whether to trust Leng Shiqi or not. Finally, she made up her mind and said, Good, you are very good. I will give you the cultivation method. Then, Emo Huisho took out a few handkerchiefs. She quickly wrote dense and delicate words on them, and threw them to Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi took the handkerchiefs and a system prompt appeared in front of his eyes. Discovered Level 4 Cultivation Method 10,000 Gu Spirit Devouring Technique. Incomplete. Do you want to learn it? No. Seeing this prompt, Leng Shiqi knew that the cultivation method was not fake. However, this cultivation method was incomplete, which made him unhappy. He said in a low voice, This cultivation method is not complete. Emo Huisho laughed. You said it yourself that you only want a level 4 cultivation method. My cultivation method is far beyond level 4. Even if I only gave you the first 2 levels, it is comparable to a level 4 cultivation method. Now that I have given you the cultivation method, you won't go back on your words, right? Emo Huisho thought to herself. Although this 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique was forbidden to be spread, she only gave out the first 2 levels. Moreover, this cultivation method could only be practiced with Gu worms. Even if she gave it to him, he would not be able to practice it. Leng Shiqi laughed secretly. Emo Huisho actually caught the small loophole in his words. He also retorted, That is true, but I am talking about a few level 4 cultivation methods. If you only gave me the incomplete cultivation method, this one is not enough. Don't be greedy. Emo Huisho was also angered by his words. Leng Shiqi said sarcastically. You even gave me this kind of legacy cultivation method. What are some ordinary level 4 cultivation methods worth? I am purely curious about the cultivation method system of the 6 nations of the West, and want to learn by analogy. As long as you give me 2 more level 4 cultivation methods, I will immediately arrange them for you. Mo Huisho immediately said in a low voice, You think level 4 cultivation methods are vegetables by the roadside? Leng Shiqi shrugged. If you really can't, level 4 spiritual techniques are barely enough. And Mo Huisho heard this and thought of something. She took out the square handkerchief and started writing again. This action was a tacit approval of her choice. However, Leng Shiqi was very curious. How many handkerchiefs did this Mo Huisho bring with her? Take them. Mo Huisho threw a few handkerchiefs in annoyance. Discovered level 4 spiritual technique Imperial Gu demonic sound. Do you want to learn it? Discovered level 4 spiritual technique Gu spirit spider web. Do you want to learn it? Leng Shiqi fell into silence after receiving these 2 spiritual techniques. Humph. Mo Huisho sneered inwardly. These 2 spiritual techniques were genuine level 4 spiritual techniques, but ordinary spirit cultivators couldn't cultivate them at all. Imperial Gu demonic sound was a spiritual technique that could control a large number of Gu worms. However, this Thunderfire dynasty didn't even have any Gu worms, so how could she control them? As for Gu spirit spider web, it was the spiritual technique she used to stop Leng Shiqi from chasing after her in Dark Thunder manner. Although this spiritual technique didn't rely on Gu worms, it required one to cultivate 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique to use it. In her opinion, it was impossible for Leng Shiqi to cultivate the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique, so this Gu spirit spider web was also a useless spiritual technique. Thinking of this, Mo Huisho proudly raised her head. Actually, the reason why Leng Shiqi was silent was because he really wanted these 2 spiritual techniques. Although the Imperial Gu demonic sound couldn't be used now, he would be going to Zhulu country soon. At that time, he could think of ways to get some Gu worms and use them. On the other hand, the spirit venom spiderweb was a spiritual technique with a strong binding ability that Leng Shiqi currently lacked. He had personally experienced how difficult it was to deal with this spiritual technique. It could be said that he was very satisfied with these 2 spiritual techniques. However, he still pretended to be sullen and said angrily, You really know how to take advantage of loopholes. Fine, I'll accept this small loss. You can leave now. I can help you fight for half a day at most. As for the rest of the day, you can count on yourself. After speaking, a black aura rose around him, and his figure disappeared under the cover of the black aura. Chapter 348. When Mo Huisho saw Leng Shiqi leave so straightforwardly, she was also slightly surprised. It seems that this person is somewhat trustworthy, but I don't know if he has the ability to buy time for me. If it's true, half a day is enough. Then Mo Huisho thought of Leng Shiqi's deflated look before he left. She was secretly happy and left at her fastest speed. As for Leng Shiqi, he quietly returned to his room and called Qiu Cheng over. Qiu Cheng was still sending people to clean up the devastated courtyard. Now that he was suddenly called over by Leng Shiqi, his head was full of question marks. Sir, what orders do you have? Leng Shiqi lightly said. Don't spread the news that Mo Huisho is from Zhu Road country. Wait until tomorrow morning to inform the headquarters of Shihuang province. Yes. Qiu Cheng knew that this was somewhat against the rules. Since Mo Huisho's identity was exposed, they should quickly spread the news throughout Shihuang province and capture her before she returned to Zhu Road country. But since Leng Shiqi said so, he must have his reasons. Qiu Cheng could only obey. Go. Leng Shiqi waved his hand. Qiu Cheng bowed and retreated. Leng Shiqi's lips curled up slightly. Tonight, he had earned a rank 4 cultivation technique and 2 rank 4 spiritual skills for free. It could be said that his harvest was not small. As for why he let Mo Huisho go, it was naturally because there was a use for her. After some time, he would be going to Zhu Road country. This was a rare opportunity, so he planned to use this opportunity to get more Gu worms. Although Gu techniques were a small path, They were unpredictable and hard to guard against. If used well, they could be a trump card. For example, the mind-controlling Gu could secretly control a person's thoughts. Another example was the spirit-devouring Gu, which could devour spirit energy, and was the nemesis of various spiritual skills. Thus, Gu techniques could not be underestimated. However, Leng Shiqi was going to Zhu Road country as a Dark Thunder Guard, so he probably did not have many opportunities to come into contact with Gu worms. And the reason he let Mo Huisho go back was to use her as a channel to collect Gu worms. Leng Shiqi had already memorized Mo Huisho's spiritual aura. As long as Mo Huisho appeared near him, he would immediately recognize him. That Mo Huisho's cultivation was at the spirit aperture realm. Leng Shiqi believed that there were not many women who had reached the spirit aperture realm in Zhulu country. He only needed to ask around to find out Mo Huisho's true identity. At that time, he only needed to use the excuse of Mo Huisho secretly imparting a cultivation technique to restrain Mo Huisho and make her get some Gu worms. Then everything would become simple. Therefore, he chose to release Mo Huisho. He was treating Mo Huisho like a leak. It was laughable that Mo Huisho had thought that he could use a few techniques and spiritual techniques that others could not cultivate to fool Leng Shiqi. Little did she know that Leng Shiqi had started to plot against her the moment she took out the 10,000 Gu spirit-devouring technique. Then Leng Shiqi took out the 10,000 Gu spirit-devouring technique, Imperial Gu demonic sound, and Gu spirit spiderweb to cultivate. What surprised him was that the 10,000 Gu spirit-devouring technique could be considered a very obscure cultivation technique. Out of the 9 spirit veins that it needed to open, only one was already opened by Leng Shiqi. In other words, Leng Shiqi could now open another 8 spirit veins. This made him feel that tonight's plan was too profitable. On the second day, the news that the Dark Thunder Manor's supervisory seal was not lost spread throughout Lanqi City. This made those who came to watch the show a little disappointed. Of course, what they wanted to see the most was Dark Thunder Manor being defeated. However, this also showed how unfathomable Dark Thunder Manor was. Even a great bandit like Mo Huisho was defeated by Dark Thunder Manor. It could be seen that Dark Thunder Manor was a scourge. In addition, there would be no harm if there was no comparison. Everyone's topic of discussion shifted to the comparison between the City Lord's Manor and Dark Thunder Manor. Look at the City Lord's Manor. There were hundreds of city guards and a city lord who was in the late stage of the spirit aperture realm, but it was still stolen. On the other hand, Dark Thunder Manor only had a few dozen Dark Thunder guards, and none of them were in the spirit aperture realm. Even so, Mo Huisho was not able to succeed. Under such a comparison, Dark Thunder Manor's reputation seemed to have overshadowed the City Lord's Manor. Sun Gang's expression was unsightly, but he didn't care too much about this. He was more concerned about Mo Huisho's identity. Early in the morning, he received information from Leng Shiqi that Mo Huisho was a spy from Zhulu country. A spy from Zhulu country actually entered his City Lord's Manor, as if there was no one there. This was simply a disgrace. It was his dereliction of duty. Catching spies was the Dark Thunder Guard's job, but this spy committed crimes in Lanqi City, which was under Sun Gang's jurisdiction. This was his responsibility. Although the higher-ups didn't blame him, Sun Gang's heart still felt stifled. At the same time, he really wanted to know how Leng Shiqi found out about Mo Huisho's identity. As for the Leng Shiqi that these people were talking about, he didn't care about the outside world and only cared about his own cultivation. On the path of cultivation, he couldn't relax at all. Because he had already opened up 42 spirit veins previously, he had a lot of experience. Thus, this time, he only used 5 days to open up the additional 8 spirit veins of the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique. At this point, he already had 50 spirit veins on him. Just in this aspect, no one could compare to him. But his goal was to open up all 72 spirit veins in his body. Unfortunately, he didn't have any extra rank 4 cultivation techniques on hand, so he had to think of a way to get some rank 4 cultivation techniques. Actually, he also had an expectation in his heart, and that was, why hadn't his reward arrived yet? He had uprooted the Xianyang sect along with a few other clans. The reward for such a great contribution should be very generous. and there might even be a cultivation technique inside. But counting the time, more than a month had passed, and there was still no news from the higher-ups. Not only was there no news about the reward, but there was also no news about the matter of going to Zhu Road Country. Since they were going to Zhu Road Country to ask for an explanation, shouldn't they take advantage of the fact that the matter had just happened to save them? Of course, these were all problems that the higher-ups were considering. He couldn't care less even if he wanted to. Since the reward didn't arrive, he could only turn his attention to other people. What he needed the most now was a rank 4 cultivation technique, but rank 4 cultivation techniques were exceptionally precious. Also, there were requirements for the rank 4 cultivation technique that he wanted. That was, the spirit veins that needed to be opened up in the cultivation technique couldn't be the same as the ones that he had already opened. Lung Shiqi had already opened up 50 spirit veins. If he didn't want it to be the same, the requirements for the cultivation technique were extremely strict, especially since there were still many spirit veins in his legs that hadn't been opened up. So what he needed the most was a cultivation technique that was good at speed. Lung Shiqi's eyes flickered, and he suddenly thought of someone. After a while he called a dark lightning guard and ordered, "Go and call the Zhong clan's clan head Zhongcheng over." He prepared to harvest leeks again. Chapter 349. Zhongcheng was brought to Dark Thunder Manor. Along the way, his heart was jumping up and down. He couldn't guess why Lung Shiqi called him here, and he didn't know if it was a blessing or a curse. He also knew about Emo Huisho's failure in Dark Thunder Manor. Even a Spirit Aperture Realm bandit was defeated by Lung Shiqi. It could be seen that his methods were getting more and more powerful. Zhongcheng walked into the meeting hall and saw Lung Shiqi sitting on the main seat. He quickly bowed and said, "Greetings to Lord Supervisor." It could be said that he lowered his status to the lowest. "Sit," Lung Shiqi said indifferently. The reason he called Zhongcheng here was naturally because he was interested in the Zhong family's cultivation technique. The patriarchs of the 6 great families in Mist Qi City were all at the Spirit Pulse realm. Without a cultivation technique of rank 4 or above, it was impossible for them to cultivate to this realm. Therefore, Lung Shiqi planned to obtain the cultivation techniques of the 6 great families. The cultivation techniques of the 6 great families might not be that profound, but Lung Shiqi didn't care about how powerful the cultivation technique was, but how many spirit pulses it could open. And the Zhong family's cultivation technique was one that specialized in speed. This wasn't a secret, and the Dark Thunder Guard's information was very clear. Zhongcheng sat down anxiously. When he first saw Lung Shiqi, he was keenly aware that something bad was going to happen today. Therefore, he felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. However, he still smiled and said, "Lord Lu, if there's anything, just tell me." Lung Shiqi smiled. "Today I called Patriarch Zhong here to discuss the Tao of Spirit Cultivation." Discuss the Tao of Spirit Cultivation? Zhongcheng was confused. What was this about? Seeing Zhongcheng's confused expression, Lung Shiqi knocked on the chair and said, "I heard that Patriarch Zhong's light feather gale record is quite mysterious. Those who successfully cultivate it will be as fast as the wind, and as light as a feather. I wonder if that's true?" When he heard Lung Shiqi mention his family's cultivation method, Zhongcheng's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling about this. He secretly swallowed his saliva and laughed dryly. Really, if that's the case, then it's easy." Lung Shiqi suddenly clapped his hands. At this time, Qin Jianchen expressionlessly walked in with his sword. Qin Jianchen's injuries were mostly healed after a few days of recuperation. He glared at Zhongcheng the moment he walked in. Qin Jianchen was the Blood Cloak assassin of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Many people had died in his hands. Being stared at like this, Zhongcheng suddenly felt a chill coming from his tailbone and going up his spine, making him shudder. He could even sense that this person could kill him with a single strike of the sword. Zhongcheng trembled and said, My lord, what do you mean? I have never done anything to let you down." Lung Shiqi said indifferently, "Oh, it's nothing. It's just that this envoy wants to see the Zhong family's light feather storm record." Coincidentally, this envoy's subordinate, Dark Lightning Envoy Qin Jianchen, is also proficient in speed. You can compare notes with him. Hearing Leng Shiqi's words, with Zhong Cheng's shrewdness, he immediately knew what Leng Shiqi wanted. He actually wanted the light feather storm record. Zhong Cheng's heart was filled with bewilderment. This cultivation method was the foundation of their Zhong family. He absolutely could not casually leak it out. However, he couldn't help but have some doubts. In his opinion, Leng Shiqi's cultivation was improving at a rapid pace. Furthermore, his battle strength was also very strong. He was able to kill someone at the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, when he was at the middle stage of the Spirit Pulse realm. At the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, he was actually able to stall the Spirit Aperture realm Li Feizhou. Such a person definitely had a very high-level cultivation method. How could he possibly be interested in the light feather storm record of his family? Zhong Cheng was bewildered, but he quickly understood that Leng Shiqi didn't call him over to discuss this matter with him. If he didn't agree, he probably wouldn't be able to walk out of this door. Zhong Cheng made his decision in a breath's time. He stood up and said, "Why is Lord Lu so troublesome? Why don't I offer the light feather storm record? Lord Lu can slowly comprehend it." This isn't too good. Leng Shiqi's face showed some hesitation when he heard this. In reality, his evaluation of Zhong Cheng rose a bit. Although this person was greedy for life and afraid of death, he had a vision and decisiveness that ordinary people couldn't hope to reach. Zhong Cheng smiled and said, "Lord Lu is too polite. If it weren't for Lord Lu, how could the Zhong family have its current glory? Not to mention the light feather storm record. Even if it was the entire Zhong family, it would be worth it. Since the Zhong family head is so enthusiastic, I can't refuse. I'll accept this light feather storm record." Leng Shiqi revealed a smile on his face. "How about this? I'll make the decision. The Zhong family can send a spirit transformation realm cultivator to join the Dark Thunder Guard. However, this person must have some ability. My Dark Thunder Guard doesn't accept trash." Zhong Cheng was secretly shocked when he heard this. Join the Dark Thunder Guard? His Zhong family could join the Dark Thunder Guard. What did this mean? This meant that his Zhong family and the Dark Thunder Guard were one family. He could be considered to have completely boarded the Dark Thunder Guard's ship. Zhong Cheng felt that exchanging a cultivation method for the long-term development of the Zhong family was definitely worth it. He quickly bowed and said, "Many thanks for Lord Lu's kindness. Please rest assured that this little one will carefully select the family's disciples." Leng Shiqi waved his hand and Qin Jianchen understood and retreated. Zhong Cheng took a pen and paper and wrote down the cultivation method of the light feather storm record. Rank 4 cultivation method light feather storm record discovered. Do you want to learn it? Seeing this prompt, Leng Shiqi gently smiled and said, "The Zhong family head is still sensible. By the way, I still have a few guests coming later. They are all people that the Zhong family head knows. You can meet them here." Zhong Cheng's eyelids twitched when he heard this. He immediately guessed who the other guests Leng Shiqi was talking about were. It must be the family heads of the other 5 families. It turned out that not only did Leng Shiqi want his Zhong family's cultivation method, but he also wanted the cultivation methods of the other 5 families. After this, the other 5 family heads came one after another. Under Leng Shiqi's coercion and Zhong Cheng's example, they had no choice but to hand over their family's cultivation methods. In the same way, Leng Shiqi also promised that they could send a disciple to join the Dark Thunder Guard, which was not a bad treatment. Overall, things went very smoothly. After he sent everyone away, Leng Shiqi immediately returned to his room to prepare to cultivate and open up his spiritual veins. To his surprise, the Zhong family's light feather storm record could open up an additional 6 spiritual veins. It was a pity that the other 5 cultivation methods were rather ordinary. These 5 cultivation methods only added up to 10 more spiritual veins. However, Leng Shiqi was very satisfied. As long as he opened up all the spiritual veins of the 6 cultivation methods, he would have 66 spiritual veins. Chapter 350. Not long after, Leng Shiqi had just opened the 6th spirit vein of the Light Feather Gale record when he received a message from the Western Desolate Province headquarters asking him to make a trip there as soon as possible. The message mentioned that he was going to the Western Desolate Province for 2 things. One was that he had received his reward, and the other was that he was preparing to leave for Zhu Road country. Leng Shiqi didn't expect these two things to happen at the same time, but it was good. It saved him the trouble of making 2 trips. Then he called the 5 Dark Lightning envoys to the conference hall. I'm going to the Western Desolate Province immediately, and then I'll follow Inspector Yu to Zhu Road country. I'm not sure when I'll return, so you guys will be in charge of Dark Lightning Manor for the time being. Leng Shiqi called them over to arrange everything. He said, Qiu Cheng, you'll still be in charge of intelligence, and Qiao Qian will continue to manage the Dark Lightning Guards. Qianming, you'll be in charge of handing over missions. As for Qin Jianchen, you just need to keep all the troublemakers under control. Qiu Cheng and Qiao Qian were still in their original positions, and Qianming was in charge of managing missions when he was disguised as Pang Yuan, so it was natural for him to do it. Qin Jianchen wasn't good at communicating with people, so he wasn't suited to manage Dark Lightning Manor. Of course, Leng Shiqi didn't transfer him from the Blood Garment Pavilion to manage things. Instead, he was interested in his battle strength. After Leng Shiqi left Mist City, it was unknown how long it would take for him to return, so it was inevitable that some troublemakers would come out to cause trouble. With Qin Jianchen here, he could leave without worry. Everyone nodded in agreement, but Qin Jianchen didn't say anything, but everyone was already used to it. At this time Guan Feihong spoke. Sir, what about me? Among them, Leng Shiqi didn't mention Guan Feihong. He didn't want to fight for power, but he couldn't just sit around and bask in the sun every day. Leng Shiqi turned to look at him and said, You'll come with me to Zhu Road country. Yu Ruifeng had sent a message saying that he could bring a subordinate with him. The reason why he chose Guan Feihong was because Guan Feihong was at the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, and could be considered a decent fighter. Secondly, Leng Shiqi always felt that Guan Feihong seemed to know a lot about the Gu God sect. Taking him to Zhulu country might be able to collect the Gu worms more smoothly. Guan Feihong's eyes flashed as he lowered his head and said, Yes. As for Qiu Cheng, Xiao Qian and the others, they all looked at him enviously. Being brought to Zhu Road by Leng Shiqi was not only a golden opportunity, but the trust they had in him was enough to make them envious. After arranging these matters, Leng Shiqi didn't delay any further. After simply packing up, he brought Guan Feihong to Western Desolation City. This time, because he was bringing people with him, he didn't use the fate skill to hasten his journey. He could only ride a spirit horse for 4 days before finally arriving at the Western Desolated City. But to Leng Shiqi's surprise, he bumped into Yu Ruifeng the moment he stepped into Dark Thunder Manor's headquarters. Yu Ruifeng seemed to have been waiting for Leng Shiqi. When he saw him arrive, he approached him with an anxious expression and said, Follow me first. Leng Shiqi indicated for Guan Feihong to wait here for a moment. He followed Yu Ruifeng to a side room with doubts in his heart. Yu Ruifeng said with a serious expression, Your reward has arrived, but you must be careful of the person who delivered it. Who is it? Leng Shiqi was surprised to see Yu Ruifeng so serious. This was the first time he saw Yu Ruifeng like this. Moreover, did they need someone to deliver the reward? Couldn't they just send someone else? From Yu Ruifeng's words, this person wasn't simple at all. Even a high-ranking inspector like him seemed to be wary of this person. Yu Ruifeng said, The person who came is Eunuch Gao, one of the Dark Thunder Manor's supervisors. He is also His Majesty's trusted aide. His short sentence immediately caused Leng Shiqi's pupils to shrink. Although he did not know much about Dynasty's internal affairs, especially what happened in the Supreme Palace, he had at least some common sense. This Eunuch Gao was one of His Majesty's most trusted people. He was also one of the 4 supervisors of the Dark Thunder Manor, and was in charge of supervising the 8 western counties of the Thunderblaze dynasty. It could be said that this person was his direct superior. This was an important person who could reach the heavens. However, Eunuch Gao had always been by His Majesty's side. Why would he appear in the Western Desolate Province? Yu Ruifeng continued. Eunuch Gao came here secretly. This matter cannot be revealed to anyone else. Otherwise, you and I won't be able to keep our heads. When you see Eunuch Gao later, put away all your thoughts. Whatever he says, you just have to agree. Do you understand? Lung Shiqi felt that Yu Ruifeng's words didn't just contain fear towards eunuch Gao, but also a bit of fear. However, he thought about it again. As the saying goes, accompanying a ruler is like accompanying a tiger. Since eunuch Gao was able to accompany His Majesty, he must be someone with profound means. Eunuch Gao has waited long enough. Quickly go to the main hall to see him. Oh right, don't mention anything about us. However, if eunuch Gao asks, you must report truthfully. This subordinate understands. Lung Shiqi cupped his hands and left the side room. He turned towards the main hall. When he took a step into the main hall, he immediately felt that the room was filled with cold air. This kind of cold air wasn't ice cold, but cold. In his eyes, a beardless old man was sitting on a chair. He looked very old. The wrinkles on his face were like ravines, but his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. This was eunuch Gao. Lung Shiqi knew that eunuch Gao's cultivation was at the unity of heaven and man realm, the same as Yu Ruifeng. However, he had a faint feeling that if eunuch Gao and Yu Ruifeng were to fight, Yu Ruifeng would probably be killed within a few moves. He had only felt this kind of invisible aura from eunuch Gao from his master Wuxia. After Lung Shiqi entered, he only glanced at eunuch Gao before lowering his head. He respectfully said, "This subordinate Lu Xingji greets Steward Gao." "Sit." Eunuch Gao's voice sounded hoarse and sharp. It was very uncomfortable to listen to. Lung Shiqi originally wanted to be polite, but when he thought of Yu Ruifeng's instructions, he bowed again and sat down. Eunuch Gao's eyes swept over Lung Shiqi. His eyes became unusually bright. Heroes indeed come from the young. Lung Shiqi felt that eunuch Gao's gaze was about to see through him. When he heard eunuch Gao's words, he didn't know if eunuch Gao was talking about the destruction of profound Yang sect or if eunuch Gao had seen through him. He humbly said, "Steward Gao is overpraising this subordinate." Eunuch Gao expressionlessly said, "You used your spiritual pulse cultivation to destroy profound Yang sect and Zhulu country's conspiracy. You are worthy of such praise. I've also brought you the reward you deserve on this trip. There are 2 rewards in total. First, I have fought for a spot for you. A spot to represent the entire Western Desolate Province in this event." Hearing this, Lung Shiqi was confused. Wasn't this just painting a pie in the sky? From eunuch Gao's words, it seemed like a very rare spot. However, compared to a castle in the sky, eunuch Gao preferred a real reward. However, he didn't show any expression on his face. "Second, I can agree to one of your requests." Hearing this, Lung Shiqi's heart suddenly moved. Chapter 351. What did Lung Shiqi want the most? Of course, what he wanted the most was a cultivation method. Right now, he only lacked 6 spirit meridians to open up all the spirit meridians in his body. However, these 6 spirit meridians were very impractical, and almost no cultivation method would open them up. Therefore, he needed a very obscure cultivation method. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi cautiously said, "Steward Gao, this humble servant wants a cultivation method of level 4 or above. It would be best if it was a very strange cultivation method." Hearing Lung Shiqi's request, eunuch Gao revealed a look of interest. He stared at Lung Shiqi for a few breaths of time, then suddenly laughed. However, his laughter was abnormally unpleasant to the ears, and even a bit piercing, making people feel uncomfortable. "This request is rare, but you've asked the right person. I do have a strange cultivation method here, but I don't know if you dare to cultivate it." Eunuch Gao threw out a jade slip half the size of a palm. Lung Shiqi was a bit confused when he caught it. "Send your mental power into it." Lung Shiqi's mind moved, and his mental power surged into the jade slip. Then he suddenly saw sinister words in his mind. Cold Nether Treasure Manual. This jade slip recorded a cultivation method, and it was a level 5 cultivation method. If a level 4 cultivation method was enough to support a large family, then a level 5 cultivation method was enough to support a spirit cultivation sect. Eunuch Gao was actually giving him a level 5 cultivation method? Lung Shiqi couldn't help but feel a bit surprised. This cultivation method was personally created by me, and there has never been a successor. You are the first. Eunuch Gao's voice sounded, and Lung Shiqi withdrew his mental power. Hearing this, Lung Shiqi instantly thought of a famous cultivation method created by a eunuch in his previous life. Combined with what eunuch Gao just said, he might not dare to cultivate it. Lung Shiqi suddenly felt a cold breeze under his chair. This cultivation method. Could it be that only eunuchs could practice it? Eunuch Gao continued. The cold nether scripture is a cultivation method that my family created for my children. Although you can cultivate it without cleansing your body, if you forcefully cultivate it, it will cause an imbalance in your yin and yang. Do you want this reward or not? Eunuch Gao had already explained a lot for Lung Shiqi. Even if Lung Shiqi didn't want to, he didn't dare to say it out loud. He stood up and cupped his fists. Thank you for your reward, Steward Gao. Eunuch Gao raised a sinister smile. Good, when we reach Zhulu country, don't lose face for my imperial court. Lung Shiqi knew that Eunuch Gao was asking him to leave. He nodded and took 2 steps back before turning to leave. Eunuch Gao looked at Lung Shiqi's departing figure with a meaningful look in his eyes. When Lung Shiqi came out of the main hall, he saw Yu Ruifeng give him a look in the distance. He immediately walked over. What did Eunuch Gao ask you? Yu Ruifeng seemed to ask anxiously, but Lung Shiqi frowned inwardly. He answered, Eunuch Gao didn't ask anything. Really? How would this subordinate dare to deceive Lord Yu? Ha! Yu Ruifeng raised his head and smiled. How can I not believe virtuous nephew's words? Right, virtuous nephew. Can you tell me what reward Eunuch Gao gave you? Don't misunderstand, I'm just curious. Lung Shiqi sneered inwardly. This Yu Ruifeng probably wanted a share of the pie. But he had nothing to hide and wanted Yu Ruifeng to explain. So he said, Eunuch Gao gave me a cultivation method and a spot, nothing else. At this point, Lung Shiqi deliberately lowered his voice. Martial uncle, isn't this Eunuch Gao too stingy? He sent me away with a cultivation method. But when Yu Ruifeng heard the word spot, his eyes widened. He was a dignified inspector of the Western Wilderness Dark Thunder Guard, a person with real power. Yet he revealed such a shocked expression. Yu Ruifeng murmured, Spot? Is it really that spot? Virtuous nephew, what was Eunuch Gao's exact words? When Lung Shiqi saw Yu Ruifeng making a fuss over nothing, he knew that the quota was extremely precious, so he repeated Eunuch Gao's words to him. Yu Ruifeng nodded. It can't be wrong, it can't be wrong. Virtuous nephew, you're really lucky. Eunuch Gao wants to nurture you greatly. But Lung Shiqi was still confused. Martial uncle, what exactly is that spot? This matter hasn't been completely decided yet, so I can't reveal it to you. But you have to know that your spot is the only one in the entire Western Wilderness Dark Thunder Guard. You can imagine how precious this spot is. In my original plan, after returning from Zhulu, I was going to select some people to compete for this spot. But now that Eunuch Gao has spoken, it's yours. It saves me a lot of effort. Lung Shiqi understood half of it. This spot was obviously very rare. Now that he was directly appointed, it was a great reward. But unfortunately, he still didn't know what this spot was for. Since Yu Ruifeng didn't say, he couldn't ask. He could only wait patiently. And after Yu Ruifeng confirmed this matter, his words and actions towards Lung Shiqi became more enthusiastic. He pulled him to chat, as if they were really uncle and nephew. After a long time, Yu Ruifeng said, Virtuous nephew, it's getting late. You should go rest first. Tomorrow we'll prepare to leave for Zhulu. Okay, martial nephew will take his leave. Come, take virtuous nephew Lu to the east courtyard. Yu Ruifeng immediately called out. The 2 servants immediately led Lung Shiqi away. At the same time, they were secretly surprised. The east courtyard was a place where only distinguished guests could live. Generally speaking, Yu Ruifeng would only arrange for distinguished guests of similar status to him to live in the east courtyard. After settling down in the east courtyard, Lung Shiqi locked himself in his room and took out the jade slip that Eunuch Gao had given him. Lung Shiqi did some calculations. In these few short days, he had actually collected as many as 8 4th-tier and above cultivation techniques. And it even included a rank 5 cultivation method. In the past, Lung Shiqi definitely wouldn't have dared to think about this. This was the benefit of status and strength. It was no wonder that many people were obsessed with these things their whole life. However, Leng Shiqi didn't care very much. Next, he began to concentrate on cultivating the Cold Nether scripture and the two accompanying spiritual skills, Cold Nether Palm and Cold Nether Hand. These two spiritual skills were both rank 5 spiritual skills. What surprised him even more was that this Cold Nether scripture was indeed very different from ordinary cultivation methods. It just happened to be able to open up his remaining 6 spirit veins. This also meant that as long as he cultivated for a certain amount of time, he could open up all 72 spirit veins in his body. Chapter 352. After a night of hard work, Leng Shiqi finally opened up another spirit vein. The next morning, their delegation of more than 20 people set off for Zhulu country. Although they were called a delegation, they had neither the honor nor the equipment of a delegation. These people included Inspector Yu Ruifeng, Supervisor Yuan Song who was in charge of the South County, and Leng Shiqi, as well as the accompanying guards. Even the weakest of the guards were at the spiritual pulse realm. There were several masters in the gang spirit realm. Leng Shiqi only brought Guan Feihong, Yuan Song brought 5 subordinates, and Yu Ruifeng brought more than a dozen people. And there was a very special person among these people. That was Jill. This witness had been kept by Leng Shiqi, so that when they arrived at Zhulu country, he could testify in person. Because there weren't many of them, each of them rode on a spirit horse and rushed towards Zhulu country at top speed. There was only a grassland and a few military towns between the West Baron Prefecture and Zhulu country. There was no difficult road, so it only took them nearly 10 days to arrive at Zhulu country. As soon as they entered Zhulu country, Leng Shiqi not only saw many people dressed up in the west regions, but also saw various strange buildings that could not be seen in the imperial court. It was an eye-opener. There were no prefectures in Zhulu country because the entire Zhulu country was not as big as the West Baron Prefecture. So there were only dozens of cities in Zhulu country. Leng Shiqi and his group went straight into the imperial city of Zhulu country. At this moment, at the gate of the imperial city, the prince of Zhulu country, Prince Gus, received them. Prince Gus looked to be in his 40s or 50s. His body was a little weak, and he looked a bit like a scholar. Prince Gus said in an awkward accent, "Welcome, special envoys from your country. Please come with me to the post house to rest." On the way here, Yu Ruifeng had already given the information of the high level of Zhulu country to Leng Shiqi. Zhulu country was naturally led by its king, but internally, it was divided into 2 major factions, the pro-war faction and the pro-peace faction. The peacemaking faction was basically made up of the old officials of Zhulu country. They were led by the current state elders and state preceptor. The state preceptor was the leader of the Gu God sect, which was the state religion of Zhulu country. The other pro-war faction was led by 2 princes, and Prince Gus was one of them. Zhulu country sending a prince to greet the envoy was giving Yu Ruifeng enough face, but Yu Ruifeng kept a straight face and didn't give Prince Gus any face. He knew why they were here. They were here to denounce him. Moreover, the smuggling of refined iron was obviously for the sake of war, and it was most likely instigated by the pro-war Prince Gus. The group followed Prince Gus to the post house next to the palace. After Yu Ruifeng sent Prince Gus away, he immediately called Yuan Song and Leng Shiqi over. Yu Ruifeng said, "Tomorrow come with me to see Zhulu country's king Hidang. Remember, no one in Zhulu is worthy of our respect, so even if you see the king, you have to straighten your backs. This is the power of our Thunderfire dynasty." Leng Shiqi and Yuan Song nodded. Yu Ruifeng looked at Leng Shiqi and said, "Tomorrow, go to the palace with that Jill. Also bring all the evidence on you. With the witnesses and evidence they can't deny it. However, the 2 of you shouldn't speak unless absolutely necessary. After all, this is a negotiation between 2 countries. Any slip of the tongue will be magnified." This subordinate understands. Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and said, "Well, since we're already here, there's no harm in telling you some things." Yu Ruifeng's face became serious. "Although we say we're here to denounce them, you should know the dynasty's intentions. They won't tear apart all pretense of cordiality with Zhulu country. Therefore, we can only try to get as many benefits as possible. The more benefits we get, the more credit we will get. Also, we have another mission. Leng Shiqi's face showed a confused expression, but he already guessed it. Of course, a big shot like Eunuch Gao wouldn't appear in the western wilderness just to give him a reward. At most, it was on the way. The time he came to the western wilderness coincided with the time he went to Zhulu country. Leng Shiqi wouldn't believe that there wasn't a connection between the two. At that time, he guessed that this trip to Zhulu country wasn't as simple as denouncing them. Yu Ruifeng raised his hand and took out a piece of jade stone. He injected spiritual energy into it, and the jade stone suddenly released a layer of jade brilliance that enveloped the three of them. This should be some kind of restriction that isolated sound and spiritual energy. Even so, Yu Ruifeng lowered his voice and said carefully, Zhulu country and Profound Yang sect gathered a large amount of fine iron. It's very likely that it was ordered by the two pro-war princes. The higher-ups want us to secretly help the pro-peace faction suppress the pro-war faction. Leng Shiqi was secretly shocked. Was this to interfere with the internal affairs of another country? However, with just the few of them, could they do it? Yuan Song also frowned and asked, Sir, we only have a total of 20 people. How can we interfere with the conflict between the two factions? If we knew this would happen, we should have brought more people. Yu Ruifeng shook his head. If we bring too many people, it will arouse suspicion. Moreover, our goal is to suppress the pro-war faction but not the two princes. We only need to use some methods to get rid of a few pro-war ministers and weaken their forces. The rest will be done by the pro-peace faction for us. But we just got here and something happened to the pro-war ministers. Isn't this too obvious? Yuan Song was still a little hesitant. However, Leng Shiqi found that Zhou Song was worrying too much. Perhaps this person had been the great supervisor for too long, so he had to be meticulous in everything he did and not leave any loopholes. He didn't know that even if the people of Zhulu country knew that they were the ones who did it, so what? As long as they did it cleanly and didn't leave any traces, whether it was the king or the two princes, they wouldn't be able to offend the Thunderfire dynasty. Moreover, the pro-peace faction might even raise their hands to support their actions. A trace of dissatisfaction flashed across Yu Ruifeng's eyes, but he still patiently explained it to Leng Shiqi, which was exactly what he had expected. Then they discussed some details of the plan, and went their separate ways. Leng Shiqi returned to his room with complicated feelings. Since they wanted to interfere with the conflict between the factions of Zhulu country, then his matter of collecting large numbers of goo worms wouldn't be so smooth. Thinking of goo worms, he thought of Mo Huisho. Then he sat cross-legged on the bed, and his eyes suddenly turned green and white. With his current mental strength, Huitai's field of vision had already expanded to a range of 7 to 8 miles. He could already see half of the royal city. The reason why Leng Shiqi activated Huitai was firstly to check how many experts there were in the royal city. Secondly, he wanted to try his luck and see if he could find Mo Huisho. However, what surprised Leng Shiqi was that he really found Mo Huisho. However, Mo Huisho was actually in the royal palace. Chapter 353. Leng Shiqi didn't expect to find Mo Huisho so quickly. And she was actually in the palace. Is she a member of Zhulu country's royal family? He guessed. But this was also good. He originally planned to use Mo Huisho to help him collect goo worms, so the earlier he found her, the better. Unfortunately, now wasn't the time to go out, so Leng Shiqi could only stay in the room and cultivate. The night passed quickly, and it was very peaceful. The next morning, Leng Shiqi sent Guan Fei Hong to gather information, but he didn't want to gather information about the main combat faction, but he wanted information about the Goo God sect and goo worms. This was his main purpose in coming to Zhulu country. As for holding accountable and interfering in Zhulu country's faction disputes, with Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song around, there was no place for him to speak. Leng Shiqi walked out of the door, and was surprised to see a group of Zhulu country's people rushing in angrily, heading straight for Yu Ruifeng's room. He furrowed his brows and felt a little uneasy. Something important must have happened to make these people so angry. So he followed them. Leng Shiqi had just gotten close to Yu Ruifeng's room when he heard angry shouts coming from inside, and a piece of news that shocked him. Zhulu country's king died mysteriously last night. In a moment, thousands of thoughts flashed through Leng Shiqi's mind. The king died? No matter how small Zhulu country was, it was still a country. How could the king suddenly die? And he died after they came here, so it looked like they were the ones who did it. And those people just now were some of Zhulu country's ministers. They thought it was Yu Ruifeng and the others who killed him. Leng Shiqi walked into the room and saw Yu Ruifeng's face as black as an iron pot, being pointed at and questioned by a few people. Now they had come here specifically to question him. In the end, before they could even begin, they were questioned by someone else. Leng Shiqi looked at Yu Ruifeng and knew that he had a lot of anger in his heart. Yu Ruifeng was the inspector of the West Baron Prefecture, and the prefecture he oversaw was even bigger than the Zhu Road country. He came to Zhu Road country with a bit of arrogance. Now that he was being questioned by a group of officials from a small country, he would definitely be furious. But Yu Ruifeng didn't say anything. He just sat there with a sullen face. Leng Shiqi nodded. Yu Ruifeng was right. At this time, Yu Ruifeng absolutely couldn't say anything. They had all stayed in the post house last night. Many of them could testify to each other. It would only take a little investigation to find out. And once Yu Ruifeng got angry, he would be caught red-handed and wouldn't let go. At this moment, Yuan Tsang also rushed over. He chuckled and tried to smooth things over. Everyone. Sirs, there's no need to be so emotional. We've only just found out about your country's king's passing, and our hearts are filled with grief. But this matter has nothing to do with us. We didn't even take a step out of the post house. You'll know once you check. The people of the Thunder Flame dynasty are the most despicable. You just arrived at the King City, and the king died mysteriously. Who else could it be other than you? Don't think that we don't know. You're all from the Dark Thunder Guards, and you're all spirit cultivators of the Sky Realm. It's not impossible to assassinate the king without anyone knowing. You dare to assassinate the king? Take them down. Yuan Tsang and Yu Ruifeng quickly exchanged glances. At this time, not only them, but even Leng Shiqi could see that these people were here to cause trouble. Anyone with a discerning eye would know that the reason why the Thunderflame dynasty sent Leng Shiqi and the Dark Lightning Guards and delayed for more than a month before coming to the Zhu Road country was to make both sides turn the matter into a small one. As long as Zhu Road country took out some benefits, everyone would treat it as if the transportation of iron didn't happen. Therefore, Leng Shiqi and the others would definitely not assassinate the king. They had no motive at all. And these officials of Zhu Road country were all people who could sit in high positions. How could they be fools? How could they not see it? Therefore, these people wanted to use the king's death to put the hat of a major suspect on the Dark Thunder Guards. This way, the Dark Thunder Guards could only focus on proving their innocence. How could they have the chance to question the Zhu Road country about collecting iron? To Yu Ruifeng, the king's death was completely unexpected and completely disrupted the plan they made last night. But thinking about it, now that the king was dead, the throne was empty. There was no need to think about what would happen next. Zhu Road country would definitely fall into internal strife for the throne. As long as Zhu Road country fell into chaos, they would no longer have any thoughts of harming the Thunder Flame dynasty. This was a good thing. At this time, another person rushed in. It was Prince Gus. As soon as he walked in, he scolded the officials who were causing trouble. Impudent. Lord Yu is the special envoy of the Thunder Flame dynasty. His status is noble, and even this king is far inferior to him. You actually dare to question Lord Yu? You are really reckless. Prince Gus, their appearance and the king's death cannot be a coincidence. That's right. Even if they are the special envoys of the Thunder Flame dynasty, we must investigate this matter thoroughly. So what if they are from the Thunder Flame dynasty? They dare to assassinate the king. At most, we will fight them to the death. Enough, Prince Gus roared. A group of people who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Haven't you embarrassed yourselves enough? This king orders you to leave this place immediately. When they saw how angry Prince Gus was, they didn't dare to disobey the king's orders. They could only leave with righteous indignation while muttering. Prince Gus turned around and put on a warm smile. He said to Yu Ruifeng, Lord Yu, please forgive us. The cheating country's king suddenly passed away, and the officials were a little flustered. They should die 1,000 times for disturbing Lord Yu's rest. As the saying goes, don't slap a smiling face. Yu Ruifeng also squeezed out a smile and said, Prince Gus, what are you saying? I am also very surprised and sad about the death of your king. It is understandable that the officials are a little agitated. Prince Gus heaved a sigh of relief and said, Oh, since that is the case, this king will thank Lord Yu on behalf of those officials for letting bygones be bygones. Now that the king has passed away, the Zhulu country is without a leader. Lord Yu's matter may be pushed back for a while. It is fine. I am afraid that your country has a lot of things to deal with now. We can just wait here. Yu Ruifeng's words were full of understanding. Lord Yu is really magnanimous. This king admires you. Speaking until here, he sighed again. Sigh. The palace is in a mess now. This king still has to go back and pacify the officials. I will not disturb Lord Yu's rest. Prince, please do as you wish. After Prince Gus left, Yu Ruifeng asked Leng Shiqi, who had been watching from the side, What do you think? Leng Shiqi said, One is playing the good cop, the other is playing the bad cop. Chapter 354. Yu Ruifeng looked at Leng Shiqi with appreciation. From the beginning, when Wuxia came to him through the back door, he actually didn't put Leng Shiqi in his eyes, so he deliberately arranged the position of supervisor for Leng Shiqi. In his mind, Leng Shiqi would definitely not be able to stay in this position. He arranged this in order to let Leng Shiqi know that it was not easy to enter the Dark Thunder Guard, so that he would take the initiative to back out. But later, Leng Shiqi quickly stabilized his position as supervisor, and eliminated the Xianyang faction with lightning speed, and directly obtained the only position from Eunuch Gao. All of these things made Yu Ruifeng re-evaluate Leng Shiqi again and again. Now, after getting along with him for a while, he found that Leng Shiqi was really capable. For example, in today's matter, if it was an ordinary supervisor, he would have already panicked, but Leng Shiqi was able to see through the deep meaning of it. Yu Ruifeng asked again, Then why do you think they did this? Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, Whether their king died accidentally or not, they just want to take this opportunity to postpone the investigation indefinitely. Even when the new king ascends the throne, they can deny this account. That's right. Yu Ruifeng's expression at this time was very calm, and there was no longer a bellyful of anger like before. I didn't expect you to see it so clearly, but in this way, our investigation mission will be considered a failure. Not only that, I'm afraid we won't even have a chance to suppress the pro-war faction. We can only stay in this post as guests for a while, and then go back with our tails between our legs. Leng Shiqi's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light and said, Not necessarily. Ha! Yu Ruifeng raised his eyebrows, showing a look of interest. From what you said, it seems that there is still a chance. Do you have any ideas? Leng Shiqi first quietly glanced at Yuan Song. In fact, the one discussing this with Yu Ruifeng should be Yuan Song, the supervisor. In fact, Leng Shiqi was stealing the limelight a bit. However, Zhou didn't seem to be dissatisfied at this moment, so Leng Shiqi continued. Right now, the Zhu Road King's throne is vacant. Zhu Road is different from our Thunder Dynasty, the succession system of the throne succession system, which means that both the pro-war faction and the pro-peace faction have a chance to ascend the throne. And we can secretly support the pro-war faction, and let their people sit on the throne, which is equivalent to completing the mission. As for the investigation matter, we can use it as a bargaining chip. We can take the opportunity to gain more benefits. After Leng Shiqi finished speaking, Yu Ruifeng's eyes flickered, but before he could say anything, Yuan Song said, That's not right. Let's not talk with our abilities halses the sect, as hall. Zhu. SSS wills will not let's to say they will. S's will as Zhu Roads' halls was Zhu Road country's stabilizing force. The reason why Zhu Road country was able to exist until now wasn't because of how wealthy its citizens were, nor was it because of how elite its army was. It was because there were several Sky Origin stage experts in the hall. It was just that these Sky Origin stage experts didn't reveal themselves, and it had been many years since they showed themselves. They never asked about Zhu Road country's internal affairs. Even if the king was replaced, they wouldn't care. They would only show themselves when Zhu Road country was facing a calamity. And what Yuan Song was worried about was the Hall's Hall. The reason why these experts didn't interfere in the fight for the throne was because no matter who the throne ended up in, it would still be someone from Zhu Road country. If they secretly supported the pro-peace faction to suppress the pro-war faction, it wouldn't be a big deal. But if they wanted to influence the candidate for the throne, it was very likely that the experts from the hall would be drawn out. At that time, they would probably have to stay here forever. Yu Ruifeng continued. Yuan Song's words aren't without reason. Leng Shiqi said, I've considered this point before, but what if someone else begged us to get involved? Yuan Song thought for a while and asked, You mean the pro-peace faction will take the initiative to ask us for help? That's right. Leng Shiqi nodded and said, The pro-war faction and the pro-peace faction are equal in power. It's impossible for them to quickly crush the other side. And we're that extra power that suddenly appeared. Especially Lord Yu, who has the strength of Heaven Man Unity stage. He's definitely a crucial power. Also, the pro-war faction's Prince Gus has come. The pro-peace faction's people will probably come soon. Yuan Song could be the great supervisor, so he definitely had the ability. He thought carefully and said, Yes, Prince Gus's attitude was very humble when he came. I think he also had the intention of giving us face. When the right opportunity comes, he will definitely contact us secretly. Yu Ruifeng's eyes were always on Leng Shiqi. He was a little surprised that Leng Shiqi could make this chaotic matter so orderly so quickly. So he admired Leng Shiqi even more. He said, You're all right. Being able to find a breakthrough in the chaos and continue to complete the mission is the ability and quality that we Dark Thunder Guards should have. It's just that the information we have is still too little. Pass down the order. Let all the Dark Thunder Guards use all means to inquire about the king's death and the details of the two factions. Yes. Leng Shiqi and Yuan Song answered at the same time, then left Yu Ruifeng's room. In fact, Leng Shiqi didn't have much to do, because he only had Guan Feihong as his subordinate, and he had already sent him out early in the morning. So he went back the way he came and continued to cultivate. However, it was a pity that there were too many people in this post house. Someone could come back to find him at any time, so he couldn't calm down to open up the spirit vein. The whole day passed just like that. What made him a little puzzled and worried was that Guan Feihong still hadn't returned. Leng Shiqi immediately opened his supercilious eyes. There was no Guan Feihong's spiritual aura within a radius of 7 to 8 miles. Where did he go? He muttered softly, but he wasn't too worried. No matter what, Guan Feihong's cultivation was at the late stage of the spiritual pulse realm. And he was a blood-clothed assassin of the blood-clothing pavilion. It wouldn't be so easy for something to happen to him. But then he was slightly stunned, because he unexpectedly found Mo Huisho's spiritual aura near the post house. What does Mo Huisho want to do by approaching the post house? What is her identity in Zhulu country? Leng Shiqi's thoughts turned quickly. He locked onto Mo Huisho's aura, and found that her figure was slowly approaching someone. That person was Jill. Chapter 355. Ever since Jill was captured at Ai Ming Mountain, he hadn't had a good life. Now he was brought here as a witness and was locked up in the woodshed of the post hostel. There were even 2 Spirit Pulse Realm Dark Lightning emissaries guarding the door. Dark Lightning emissaries were all elites of the Dark Lightning Guards, but these 2 people didn't know that a figure had already sneaked into the woodshed. After Jill's arm was cut off, and his cultivation was sealed by Leng Shiqi, they didn't torture him. But his face was ashen, as if he had nothing left to live for. Because he was very clear that as long as the Dark Lightning Guards handed him over to Zhulugua, he would only end up dead. But at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. This person was wearing a mask and was shrouded in a layer of faint black gas. Once this person appeared, he released a few goo worms into Jill's nose and mouth. This person was Mo Huisho in disguise. Jill immediately felt as if his throat was being squeezed tightly, making it hard for him to breathe. I ask you answer. Otherwise, you will die from being eaten by 10,000 goo worms. Emo Huisho's voice was as cold as ice, making one shiver. As a citizen of Zhulugua, Jill obviously knew how tragic it was to be eaten by 10,000 goo worms. He instantly nodded. Emo Huisho asked coldly, "Who instructed you to go to Zhulugua to collect iron essence?" Jill's eyes flickered. He said, It's Prince Gus." "Nonsense!" Emo Huisho shouted. "I think you really want to try the taste of goo worms." Emo Huisho moved his finger, and the goo worms in Jill's body immediately started to devour his flesh. But his throat suddenly couldn't make any sound. Jill was in so much pain that his whole body twitched. After a few breaths, his whole body was soaked in sweat. Emo Huisho said coldly, "Still not telling the truth?" Jill's eyes were filled with fear and panic. "I am telling the truth." "Good, very good. Seems like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin." Emo Huisho prepared to torture Jill again, but who knew that Jill actually closed his eyes and put on a look of defiance. Seeing this, Emo Huisho also felt that it was a little tricky. She didn't expect Jill to be a tough nut to crack. Right now she had sneaked in secretly. There were people from the Dark Thunder Guards guarding outside the door. If she made any noise, they would be alarmed. Once she was discovered by the Dark Thunder Guards this time, the Dark Thunder Guards would definitely guard Jill strictly in the future. It would be impossible for her to sneak in again. Just when Emo Huisho didn't know what to do, a voice came from outside the door. "My two colleagues, Jill seems to know his place. So it's Lord Lu." "Greetings, Lord Lu." "Don't worry, Lord Lu. Jill knows his place." That's good. Thank you for your hard work. I have something to ask Jill. Please open the door." Emo Huisho, who was in the woodshed, recognized the voice the moment he heard it. It was Lu Xingji's voice. "He's here too?" "That's right. He was the one who captured Jill and ruined the plan to collect refined iron. He should be here." However, when she heard that he was about to come in, she secretly cursed her bad luck. She lowered her voice and said to Jill, "You're a smart person. You should know what to say and what not to say. Let's talk when we have time." Then the black gas around Emo Huisho surged and his figure disappeared. Creak. The door of the woodshed was opened. Lung Shiqi walked in and closed the door. He saw that Jill was sweating profusely and looked exhausted. However, he didn't show any surprise. Jill was also terrified. He didn't know how to explain to Lung Shiqi. However, he had to thank Lung Shiqi for coming to find him. This was equivalent to saving his life. However, Lung Shiqi's next sentence made him horrified. Lung Shiqi said, "Jill, I saved your life. How do you think you should repay me?" "What are you talking about? I don't understand." Jill was still stubborn. Lung Shiqi nodded lightly and said, "You think I don't know what happened here? Then let me guess. Why would you rather be bitten to death by the goo worms than tell me the truth? There must be someone or something important that fell into the hands of the mastermind." Hearing this, Jill's eyes narrowed slightly. Although he recovered quickly, Lung Shiqi's sharp senses still caught it. Lung Shiqi waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I'm not interested in your matters. I'm also not interested in the mastermind. After all, I'm from the Thunderstorm Dynasty, and can't be bothered to get involved in your Zhulu country's mess. However, there's a piece of news that you might not know." "What?" Jill's heart skipped a beat. He felt that what Lung Shiqi was going to say next would definitely be shocking. Lung Shiqi said in an indifferent tone, "Your king is dead." "The king is dead." This sentence was as simple as saying, "I've eaten" in Lung Shiqi's mouth. However, in Jill's ears, it was like a sudden clap of thunder. He was instantly stunned. At this moment, Lung Shiqi's eyes suddenly emitted 2 rays of 5 colors. He seized the moment when Jill was distracted and used both the soul-scaring technique and the mind-stealing technique at the same time. A great fear struck Jill's soul and instantly pushed his mind to the verge of collapse. Lung Shiqi asked in a tempting voice, "Were you ordered to sneak into the Western Desolate Province?" "Yes." Jill's eyes were empty as he said weakly, "Were you the one who secretly bribed Li Xianyang of the Profound Yang sect to collect large amounts of refined iron for you?" "Yes." "Were you forced to go to the Western Desolate Province to do this?" "Yes." At this point, Leng Shiqi hesitated and asked tentatively, "Was it the state elder and state teacher who asked you to go?" Jill's face suddenly showed a painful expression. He actually almost broke free from the illusion. However, he failed in the end. He opened his mouth and said one word. "Yes." Hearing this answer, even Leng Shiqi was shocked. Just now, he originally wanted to ask if it was Prince Gus who sent him. However, he immediately remembered that Imo Huaishou secretly came to interrogate Jill in the middle of the night. This meant that Jill probably had a huge secret. On the surface, what Jill did was indeed in line with the actions of the pro-war faction. Therefore, including Leng Shiqi and all the Dark Thunder Guards subconsciously thought that the two princes were the masterminds behind this. However, Leng Shiqi had a sudden inspiration to change his tone, and he had really discovered a shocking secret. It turned out that the people who sent people to the Western Desolate Province to collect refined iron were actually the two leaders of the peace faction. Chapter 356. If Jill's matter was arranged by the peacemakers, what was their purpose? The peacemakers naturally supported the peaceful coexistence of Zhulu country and the 5 surrounding countries, as well as the Thunderfire dynasty. Since that was the case, why did they need to collect large amounts of fine iron? Fine iron was obviously used to make weapons, but if it wasn't for war, why would they need to make so many weapons? Zhulu country didn't have a lot of soldiers. If it wasn't for war, they would have enough weapons and armor. Only during war would a large amount of weapons and armor be destroyed, and require a large amount of fine iron to support the rear. Therefore, the peacemakers didn't want Jill to collect fine iron for war, so they must have other purposes. Leng Shiqi's mind was full of thoughts. He quickly remembered that the mind-controlling voodoo that Li Xianyang used to control him was brought by Jill. The mind-controlling voodoo was extremely precious. Even the princes and ministers of Zhulu country might not be able to get their hands on it. Who could easily take out the mind-controlling voodoo? Naturally, it would be the Gu God sect that specialized in voodoo. The sect leader of the Gu God sect was also the state teacher of Zhulu country. He was one of the higher-ups of the peacemakers. I should have thought of it. Leng Shiqi also felt that he had overlooked something. When he knew that the sect leader of the Gu God sect was one of the higher-ups of the peacemakers, he should have guessed it. However, it wasn't too late now. Now that Leng Shiqi had learned the truth from Jill, it was time for him to carefully consider another matter. That is, Jill was caught smuggling fine iron in the West Desolate Province. The Dark Thunder Guards came to investigate, and then the king's sudden death. Is there any connection between these matters? From the perspective of a conspiracy theory, could this series of events have been premeditated? To be honest, Jill's method of secretly collecting fine iron in the West Desolate Province wasn't that brilliant. When Leng Shiqi took over the Dark Thunder Manor in Mischi City, he saw that the Du family was likely smuggling fine iron, but there was no conclusive evidence. This meant that the Dark Thunder Guards had been watching the Du family and Profound Yang sect for a long time. This was also the reason why the previous supervisor, Sha Yu, died. Therefore, even if there was no Leng Shiqi and Leng Shiqi might be able to unravel Jill's scheme in the future. After all, the Dark Thunder Guards were full of elites. As long as they found solid evidence and reported it to their superiors, destroying the Profound Yang sect would be a piece of cake. In other words, it was very likely that what Jill had done would still be discovered. After that, the Dark Thunder Guards would also come to the Zhu Road country to question him. The king would also die like this. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi felt a chill run down his spine. If what he speculated was true, then the person behind this was truly terrifying. If what he speculated was true, then there would definitely be major changes waiting for them in the future. It was actually very simple to prove that his guess was correct. Leng Shiqi continued to ask while Jill was still under the control of the illusion. Are you the only one who sneaked into the western wilderness to collect iron? No. Leng Shiqi's eyes narrowed. He already knew the answer. It seems that not only in the northern region of the western wilderness, but also in other regions, there were people similar to Jill doing the same thing. If they stayed in the western wilderness for a long time, sooner or later they would be exposed. This also meant that the Dark Thunder Guards would come to the Zhu Road country sooner or later. All of this was indeed the same as Leng Shiqi's guess. But then his brows deeply furrowed. Since the peace faction spent so much effort to trick them into coming to the Zhu Road country, then the king's death was most likely related to the peace faction. Now what Leng Shiqi was most concerned about was, what was their purpose? He faintly felt that they had been deeply involved in a terrible whirlpool. Just as Leng Shiqi was thinking hard, there was suddenly a big commotion in the inn. His heart tightened, and he hurriedly walked out of the woodshed. Jill's eyes rolled back and he fainted. Leng Shiqi quickly arrived at the courtyard of the post house. He saw several hundred Zhu Lu country's guards had already surrounded the place so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. More than 10 people were confronting each other in the courtyard, including Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song. As for the other side, it was Prince Gus and Prince Heli from the war faction. What surprised him the most was that Guan Feihong was standing right next to Prince Gus. At this moment, Guan Feihong was covered in injuries and his expression was somewhat stiff. More importantly, Leng Shiqi actually felt a familiar aura from Guan Feihong's body. Heart-controlling goo. Prince Heli and Prince Gus looked similar in appearance. It seemed like they were a pair of brothers. The difference was that Prince Heli was tall and big. Just by standing there, he looked like a ferocious beast. Prince Heli angrily shouted at Yu Ruifeng. Yu Ruifeng! It really was your Thunderfire dynasty's people who killed the king. Now that the witness is here, let's see how you're going to quibble. When Yu Ruifeng saw Leng Shiqi coming over, he immediately transmitted his voice. What's going on? How did your people fall into their hands and accuse us of assassinating the king? When Leng Shiqi sensed the heart-controlling goo in Guan Feihong's body, he knew what was going on. However, he couldn't say it out loud and could only explain, Sir, I don't know either. I sent Guan Feihong out to scout this morning, but he didn't return at night. I didn't expect him to be captured by Zhu Road country. But sir, you should be able to see that Guan Feihong's condition isn't right. Perhaps they used some method to control him. Yu Ruifeng nodded inwardly. Facing the two princes of Zhu Road country, he didn't lose out in terms of aura. He said, Princes, I respect you as princes of your country, which is why I'm negotiating with you. What's laughable is that as princes, you can't even see that they're trying to drive a wedge between us. Truly disappointing. What did you say? Prince Heli's eyes widened in anger. At this moment, Prince Gus pulled him back and said calmly, Sir Yu, we caught this person near the city gate tonight. He wanted to escape the city, but we interrogated him, and he told us the truth about your assassination of the king. Sir Yu, you should give us a suitable answer, right? Otherwise, even if you're from the Thunderfire dynasty, we'll still take revenge for His Majesty with our lives. At the end, Prince Gus's tone was filled with bloodthirst. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but feel anxious. He had guessed the truth, but there were too many people here, and he couldn't tell Yu Ruifeng. Moreover, even if he said it, Zhu Road country's people might not believe him. On the contrary, they might even use Guan Feihong as one of his people to refute him. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes and forced himself to calm down to find a solution. Suddenly, he had a flash of inspiration. He found a breakthrough. Chapter 357. The breakthrough that Leng Shiqi thought of was to help Guan Feihong get rid of the mind-controlling voodoo. However, it was not easy to get rid of the mind-controlling voodoo. After all, he did not have 9 leaves powerful soul power that could directly devour the mind-controlling voodoo's soul. So he thought of an old method. Using illusions to get rid of illusions. Leng Shiqi had also studied and refined mind-controlling voodoo before. He knew that mind-controlling voodoo was actually constantly releasing illusions to control people's minds. So Leng Shiqi thought of the method that he used in the Phantom Realm to make Guan Feihong fall into the illusion again. It might help him temporarily get rid of the mind-controlling voodoo. The reason why it was temporary was because the mind-controlling voodoo was constantly releasing illusions, and Leng Shiqi could not do it. However, it was enough as long as he could get rid of the mind-controlling voodoo in a short period of time. Yu Ruifeng was still arguing with the two princes, but they did not seem to have any intention of fighting. Leng Shiqi also guessed that they would not fight because once they did, there would be no room for retreat. Leng Shiqi hid behind people and secretly forced out a few drops of essence blood to form the ghost blood tattoo on his forehead. At the same time, a majestic mental power surged out. Guan Feihong was also in the late stage of the spirit pulse realm. If Leng Shiqi wanted to make him fall into the illusion instantly, he would have to use all his strength. Leng Shiqi did not hide his actions, and was quickly discovered by the people of Zhulugua. Especially since the two princes were also in the unity of heaven and man realm. They noticed Leng Shiqi's mental power. Prince Heli immediately shouted, "Where did this junior come from? Do you want to fight?" Yu Ruifeng was also a little surprised by this, but he thought that Leng Shiqi must have his reasons for doing this. Moreover, no matter what, he had to protect Leng Shiqi. He moved his feet and vaguely protected Leng Shiqi behind him. Before Guan Feihong could say anything, he saw Leng Shiqi's eyes shoot out colorful lights. Then Guan Feihong's face became a little distorted. His expression was sometimes painful, sometimes sluggish, and sometimes very shrewd. Guan Feihong opened his mouth and said intermittently, "My heart is controlled." As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. Yu Ruifeng made a prompt decision and shouted, "Princes, what is the meaning of this? You actually secretly controlled the Dark Thunder Guards to point us? Do you think the Dark Thunder dynasty is easy to bully?" Prince Gus and Prince Holy's expressions froze. Things had gone beyond their expectations. "Huh?" Leng Shiqi suddenly roared. He had already unleashed his mental energy to the maximum, and the invisible mental energy around him even stirred up gusts of wind. This scene shocked many people. Even a spirit aperture realm spirit caster might not have this level of spirit pulse. Under Leng Shiqi's full power illusion, Guan Feihong's eyes finally regained some clarity. He also knew that he didn't have much time, so he quickly said, "It's the Gu God sect's leader, Sang Hetong. He used Gu worms to control me and deliberately let me be captured by the Imperial Guards, so that the princes would attack the Dark Thunder Guards." After saying this, Guan Feihong's eyes lost their light again. Leng Shiqi panted and stopped the illusion. Just letting Guan Feihong regain his consciousness for 2 breaths was already his limit. At this point, the truth had already surfaced. Even if the people of Zhulu didn't cultivate Gu, they had seen it before. At this moment, they could see that Guan Feihong was hit by some powerful Gu. In other words, they were all played. The 2 princes' faces were uglier than the other. Prince Gus took the lead and said, "Lord Yu, so it was all a misunderstanding. You and I were both tricked. Lord Yu, please don't blame us." Yu Ruifeng's eyes flashed and he said with a mocking tone, "Even if someone was secretly manipulating you, you're both honorable princes. You're really capable to be fooled by such a small trick." Prince Heli's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. At this moment, he was a bit glad that he didn't act too impulsively. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. He walked in front of Yu Ruifeng with a twisted face. The Dark Thunder Guards thought he was going to attack, but he lowered his head and said, "Yu Ruifeng, He Li did not consider this matter thoroughly and almost caused a disaster. He Li apologized to you." At the end of his speech, he even cupped his hands towards Yu Ruifeng in the Thunderblaze dynasty's etiquette. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi felt that Prince Heli was a straightforward man who could let go of things easily. Forget it. Yu Ruifeng could only give up. Even a prince bowed his head to him. What else did he want? Yu Ruifeng lowered his voice and said, "However, since someone dared to scheme against the princes and the Dark Thunder Guards, I won't take this lying down. What do the 2 princes think?" Yu Ruifeng was also very depressed. In the morning, they had discussed that they would wait for the peacemakers to come to their door. However, they didn't expect that it would be the 2 princes from the war faction who came to their door to denounce them. This had already disrupted their plans twice in a row. Just as he didn't know what to do, Leng Shiqi broke the deadlock. Now that the clouds had cleared, Yu Ruifeng's heart gave birth to other thoughts. Prince Gus and Prince Heli both understood the meaning behind his words. He wanted them to join hands to deal with the peacemakers. Prince Gus's eyes flashed. If they could get the support of Yu Ruifeng and the Dark Thunder Guards, they would have a great chance of winning. However, this wasn't a brilliant plan. The more brilliant plan was to use the controlled Guan Feihong as a spy to make the peacemakers think that the Dark Thunder Guards and the war faction had completely fallen out. In this way, the peacemakers would take the initiative to contact the Dark Thunder Guards. When the time comes, the Dark Thunder Guards would be a bomb buried beside the peacemakers. Prince Gus immediately said, "Lord Yu is right. Prince Heli and I hate being schemed against the most. As for the person behind this, we brothers will definitely show them who's behind this. However, it would be best if we could get Lord Yu's help." Yu Ruifeng glanced at the guards around him, and then looked at Guan Feihong. He didn't say anything. Prince Gus smiled and said, "Don't worry, Lord Yu. The people we brought tonight are all our trusted subordinates. They won't leak anything out." Yu Ruifeng nodded first, but in the next moment, he threw a punch at Prince Gus. Prince Gus's eyes flickered with uncertainty as he also threw a punch at him. Although the two fists did not explode with any powerful spiritual energy or spiritual light, when the two collided, a terrifying wave of spiritual energy suddenly blasted out, shaking everyone around and forcing them to retreat again and again. Lung Shiqi quickly retreated. He knew that the show had begun. Chapter 358. Boom. A loud explosion resounded in the sky above the inn, and all the tiles in the inn's courtyard were sent flying. Fortunately, the surrounding people were all spirit cultivator, and no one was injured, but they couldn't help but be flustered. Yu Ruifeng and Prince Gus, these two spirit cultivators at unity of heaven and man realm, fought. Even if they didn't use any spirit techniques or full strength, it was still shocking enough. Prince Gus roared with a red face. "What a good Dark Thunder Guard! What a good Yu Ruifeng! The witnesses are here, and you still refuse to admit it." Yu Ruifeng also roared. "What a joke! The king of a small country is nothing. Even if he was tied up in front of me, I would be too lazy to kill him. Impudent! You dare to insult the late king in front of me." Prince Heli jumped out and started to add on to his act. Yu Ruifeng coldly shouted, "Humph, I'm standing right here. Let's see who dares to make a move. If we die here, your Zhu Lu country will be erased from the falling star continent." The two princes glared at each other, but they didn't make a move. The two sides argued for a while. Then Prince Gus said, "Guards from today onwards surround the inn. Without special orders, no one is allowed to enter or leave." Prince Heli fiercely said, "Just wait. Wait until we find conclusive evidence. Even if we kill you on the spot, the Thunder Flame dynasty won't have anything to say." Yu Ruifeng's face was gloomy, and he spat out two words. "I won't see you off." Immediately, the two princes brought a portion of the guards and Guan Feihong out of the inn. Lung Shiqi watched from the side as they tried their best to perform. He estimated that by tomorrow morning, the news of the Dark Thunder Guard's inspector and Prince Gus's fight would spread through the streets. And with the inn surrounded by the guards, everyone would know that the two princes had completely fallen out with the Dark Thunder Guard. At this time, Yu Ruifeng gave a look to Lung Shiqi and Yuan Song, then turned and walked into the room. Lung Shiqi understood and followed. Yu Ruifeng closed the door and said to Lung Shiqi, "You did very well." Yuan Song also said with great admiration, "I didn't expect Supervisor Lu's observation to be so meticulous, to be able to see that Guan Feihong was being controlled. You were even able to break that strange technique. Truly admirable." Lung Shiqi said modestly, "Sirs, you flatter me. I only saw the clues because I know Guan Feihong very well." But Yu Ruifeng said, "You have indeed made a great contribution in this matter. I will remember this in my heart. If you hadn't temporarily dispelled that technique today, I'm afraid we really might have died here." At this point, Yu Ruifeng's face darkened. "Humph, the sect leader of the Gu God sect is really something." Then Lung Shiqi told him about his interrogation of Jill and his suspicions. When Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song heard this, their faces sank. At this point, they all understood that the peace faction was secretly manipulating everything behind the scenes. Yu Ruifeng's eyes suddenly revealed a shocking cold light. He was able to sit in the position of the Western Wilderness County's inspector because of his shrewdness and skill. Moreover, his style of doing things had always been radical. This time, the peace faction had secretly schemed against him from the beginning to the end, so he naturally had to retaliate. As for the mission, as long as he could make Zhu Lugua obediently not cause trouble, the mission would be considered completed. Yu Ruifeng said in a low voice. We are now standing with the war faction, but I believe that the peace faction will definitely come to me in 2 days. At that time, I will also agree to help them. Then, we will continue to sow discord between the two sides in secret and slowly weaken their strength. When the time is right, we will choose one side to take the throne. Leng Shiqi nodded secretly. Yu Ruifeng's thoughts were similar to his. He was treating himself as a double agent, and was planning to trap both sides. The more the war faction and the peace faction fought, the weaker Zhu Lugua would become, which was naturally beneficial to the Thunderflame dynasty. However, Leng Shiqi felt that what they lacked the most now was information. It had only been a day and a night since they came to Zhu Lugua, but so many unexpected and dangerous things had happened. Moreover, they were all very passive. That was because their information was simply too limited. Even now, they hadn't even entered the palace gates, so they still didn't know how the king died. The Dark Thunder Guards that were sent out to collect information also had very little information. Therefore, after chatting with Yu Ruifeng for a while, Leng Shiqi decided to go out and investigate himself. Taking advantage of the night, he easily left the post house that was surrounded by the Imperial Guards, using the Hand of Earth. Then he quickly went around the entire Monarch City. His purpose was to light up the entire Monarch City's system map. At the same time, he also used the supercilious eyes to look for traces of Mo Huaishou. When he finished opening the system map, it was already the middle of the night, and he had already locked onto Mo Huaishou's position. After Mo Huaishou failed to interrogate Jill, she went to a slum in the north of the city. Zhu Lugua had never been rich. Even in Monarch City, there were slums. Leng Shiqi remembered that when he first found Mo Huaishou by chance, she was in the palace, which meant that her status was not low. But now, she actually went to the slums. There must be some unspeakable secrets there. Leng Shiqi quietly approached the slums and immediately found Mo Huaishou's spiritual aura. However, beside her, there was an aura that was slightly stronger than hers. It should also be a spirit aperture realm cultivator, but his realm was slightly higher than Mo Huaishou's. Leng Shiqi knew that experts in the spirit astral realm could sense all kinds of auras around them, but spirit aperture realm experts couldn't. Therefore, he directly sank into the ground and quietly approached Mo Huaishou's position. When he got closer, he heard Mo Huaishou's voice. This time, she was using her original voice. Jill refused to let go. Now Prince Gus and Prince Heli have already found the Dark Thunder Guards. Especially since Prince Heli has a fiery temper, I'm afraid things will get out of hand. Another person said. That's not necessarily true. Prince Heli looks careless on the surface, but he's actually very meticulous. Even so, it's completely impossible for the pro-war faction to win over the Dark Thunder Guard's support. This strong force will benefit the pro-peace faction. That's not necessarily true. As long as the princess consort goes to meet Yu Ruifeng before the state elder and state preceptor, she might be able to win over the Dark Thunder Guards. Let mother personally go? That's impossible. Mo Huaishou's voice suddenly became cold. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi suddenly felt an explosion of information. Mo Huaishou was actually the king and princess consort's daughter? In other words, Mo Huaishou was actually the princess of Zhu Lugua. Chapter 359. Leng Shiqi was even more puzzled. Since Mo Huaishou was the princess of Zhu Lu country, why would she run to the West Desolate province? She even came up with the name of the great thief Mo Huaishou? But Leng Shiqi wasn't very clear about the members of the royal family of Zhu Lu country. He only knew that the king indeed had a daughter, but he didn't know what her name was. Leng Shiqi suppressed the curiosity in his heart and continued to listen. Your Highness, what time is it now? Are you still bothered about your identity and face? Forgive me for speaking bluntly, but no matter which faction ascends the throne, you and Princess Consort will definitely not have a good ending. Now the only way out and support is the Dark Thunder Guards. Mo Huisho was silent for a while before she spoke. But this time, her voice sounded a little sorrowful. How could I not know what you said? But Imperial Mother and I are weak. We don't have military power, nor the support of the ministers in the court. How can we fight with the two factions? The Dark Thunder Guards will definitely not choose us. Furthermore, the Dark Thunder Guards are already suspected of assassinating Imperial Father. They can't even protect themselves, so what ability do they have to help us? Your Highness, don't belittle yourself. At least some of the clan relatives will support you. In addition, Your Highness, don't underestimate the Dark Thunder Guards. Those people will definitely not sit still and wait for death. At this time, they will definitely be eager to take the initiative. As long as Princess Consort can help them out of their current predicament, it will be equivalent to sending charcoal in snowy weather. It will be easy to rope them in. Furthermore, Your Highness often goes to the West Desolate Province. You should know what the Dark Thunder Guards are best at. Mo Huisho muttered. Dark Thunder Guards are best at investigation. That's right. The death of His Majesty has always been a mystery. Many people in the court think that they must first investigate the cause of death of the king and find the murderer who murdered the king. So the two princes of the pro-war faction were so anxious to start a conflict with the Dark Thunder Guards. If Princess Consort can invite the Dark Thunder Guards to help us investigate the king's death and find the murderer, not only can it help them clear their grievances, it can also help us win over many people's support. But the Dark Thunder Guards themselves are suspected of murdering Imperial Father. The two factions will never agree to let them investigate the cause of Imperial Father's death. Don't worry, Your Highness. As long as Her Highness is willing to step in, I will have a way. Sigh, alright, that's all we can do now. I'll have to trouble you then, senior brother. Your Highness is too polite. It is my honor to be of service to Your Highness. After that, the two left the slum separately. Leng Shiqi thought for a while. Judging from the conversation between the two, it seemed that the Princess Consort's faction was preparing to intervene in the fight for the throne, and they were also planning to rope in the Dark Thunder Guards. This was also reasonable. Actually, the Princess Consort's bloodline was not without hope. From the point of view of Yu Ruifeng and the Dark Thunder Guards, they didn't want the pro-war faction to take over, nor did they want the pro-peace faction to take over. After all, it could be said that the peacemakers had been plotting against the Dark Thunder Guards from the beginning to the end. Therefore, the Princess Consort's bloodline was the most suitable. However, Leng Shiqi was very interested in Mo Huisho and the identity of this senior brother that she mentioned. He practiced the Thousand Gu spirit devouring skill. When he came to Zhulu country, he knew that this skill was a forbidden skill of the Gu God sect, and only the core disciples of the Gu God sect were qualified to practice it. Therefore, Mo Huisho must be a member of the Gu God sect, and so should that senior brother. But this was interesting. Logically speaking, Mo Huisho should belong to the pro-peace faction. But now she wanted to take over the throne by herself. Not only that, what made Leng Shiqi more curious was why Mo Huisho, as the princess of Zhulu country, would join the Gu God sect? There might be many unknown secrets hidden in it. Although he had obtained some useful information from this trip, it also raised more questions. Leng Shiqi shook his head. He didn't want to delve into the inside story of the royal family of Zhulu country. The most important thing now was to inquire more information, so that he could have some initiative. Next, he wandered in the mansions of various ministers in Yinwu City. He kept a respectful distance from all the masters of Gang Spirit Realm in the mansion. In this way, he didn't return to his room until dawn. This night, he didn't gain much, but it wasn't little either. At least he had learned the cause of the king's death. The king's death was really strange. Although his health was not good, especially recently, it was getting worse and worse. But under the treatment of many imperial doctors, he could have held on for another 2 or 3 years. But just last night, he suddenly died. Last night, the king was still reading the memorials as usual. Suddenly, he fell on the table weakly and died. After examination, there was no wound on the king's body, and there was no sign of poisoning in his body. He died so strangely. Now, people of the two factions were trying hard to find the cause of the king's death and catch the king's assassin. Whoever could solve this problem would have a great advantage in fighting for the throne. But at present, the only suspect was the Dark Thunder Guard, because there was a witness in the Dark Thunder Guard, Guan Feihong. Thinking of Guan Feihong, Leng Shiqi couldn't help touching his chin. Guan Feihong could be said to be a knife of the pro-peace faction. But after Leng Shiqi saw through the mind-controlling insect, he became a knife of the pro-war faction and the Dark Thunder Guard. Guan Feihong was now a spy on three sides. But Leng Shiqi was more concerned about why he was implanted with the mind-controlling insect. According to Prince Heli, Guan Feihong was arrested near the city gate. Leng Shiqi remembered that he didn't find Guan Feihong even when he rolled his eyes, which meant that Guan Feihong probably left Yunwu City, and he was implanted with the mind-controlling insect, so it was very likely that he went to the Gu God sect. The Gu God sect was located on the Gu God Peak dozens of miles away from Yunwu City. Before, Leng Shiqi had always suspected that Guan Feihong seemed to have something to do with the Gu God sect. Now it seemed that it was true. He probably wanted to go to the Gu God sect to inquire about information, but he was discovered. He was also recognized as a Dark Thunder Guard, so he was implanted with the mind-controlling insect to point out the Dark Thunder Guard. It seems that I still have to find a chance to bring Guan Feihong back. Leng Shiqi murmured. Guan Feihong must still have secrets that ordinary people didn't know, but he was now imprisoned in the prince's mansion. There were not only spirit cultivators in the Gang Spirit realm, but also masters of the oneness of heaven and men realm. Leng Shiqi didn't dare to sneak in there, so this matter had to be considered in the long run. Just as he was thinking about how to contact Guan Feihong, Yu Ruifeng asked someone to summon him. As soon as he saw Yu Ruifeng, he said something surprising. Last night, the leader of the Gu God sect, Sang Hetong, came to see me. Chapter 360. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but be slightly surprised. He wasn't surprised that the Gu God sect's hierarch could easily get past the Imperial Guards outside. It was because this was nothing to an expert in the unity of heaven and man realm. He was surprised that the Gu God sect's leader came so quickly. Leng Shiqi was still thinking that now that the show had just begun, the pro-war faction had already shown up, and the princess's faction was ready to make a move. It was time for the pro-peace faction to appear. But last night, one of the leaders of the pro-peace faction, the Gu God sect's leader, Sang Hetong, had already come to find Yu Ruifeng. Yu Ruifeng set up an isolation restriction and said to Leng Shiqi and Yuan Song, Sang Hetong really came to find us to cooperate, and can temporarily remove our suspicion. Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows when he heard this. The pro-peace faction and the princess's faction wanted to help them clear their suspicion. It seemed that there would be a good show to watch. Now we have a foot in both boats, and what we need to do is sink both boats. Yu Ruifeng's eyes flashed fiercely. But Leng Shiqi thought to himself, I'm afraid we're not in two boats but three. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. My lord, Princess Bess had a conflict with the Imperial Guards outside the post house. And Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song were both surprised. Why did the princess come to find them? She even had a conflict with the Imperial Guards. Didn't this offend the two princes? Zhu Lu country wasn't a hereditary system. And if one of the two princes ascended the throne in the future, this princess would suffer. But since she was already here, there was no reason to not see her. Yu Ruifeng immediately rushed to the gate of the post house with Leng Shiqi and Yuan Song. Princess Bess looked to be in her 30s. She wasn't extremely beautiful, but she was full of luxurious and graceful temperament. At this moment, she angrily stared at the Imperial Guard who stopped her. I'll say it again, get out of the way. Please forgive me, princess. The two princes personally ordered that unless there is a special order, no one is allowed to enter or leave. Please don't make things difficult for me. The Imperial Guard half knelt in front of Princess Bess, but he didn't move half a step. Special order? I wonder if this token in my hand can be used? Bess took out a token that looked like it was made of jade, but wasn't made of jade, and seemed to be made of gold, but wasn't made of gold. All the Imperial Guards knelt down when they saw this item. Bess Wangfei directly stepped over the person who was blocking her. The guard didn't stop her anymore because what Bess Wangfei took out was the royal token of Zhulu. It symbolized the highest authority in Zhulu country. At this time, Yu Ruifeng's eyes flashed with surprise. He went forward and cupped his hands. "Greetings, Your Highness." Wang Fei first smiled gently at Yu Ruifeng, but she did not speak to Yu Ruifeng. Instead, she turned and spoke to the imperial guards kneeling on the ground. "I can prove that His Majesty's death has nothing to do with the Dark Thunder Guards. You can go back now." The imperial guards hesitated. They didn't dare to disobey the prince's orders, but they didn't dare to disobey the king's orders either. In the end, they could only say in unison, "Yes, Your Majesty." Then, the imperial guards left in a neat formation like the tide. Lung Shiqi and the others saw all of this. He knew that Wang Fei must have asked the Dark Thunder Guards for help. Bess Wang Fei then smiled at Yu Ruifeng and said, "I've wronged Lord Yu and the Dark Thunder Guards. Please don't blame me." Yu Ruifeng also revealed a smile. "It's an honor for Wang Fei to come here. Wang Fei, please come in." "Wait." A rough voice suddenly came. Lung Shiqi looked over and saw the tall Prince Heli arrive in front of the guest house like a meteor. Wang Fei's eyes flickered and there was an undetectable trace of panic in them. Prince Heli walked over with large strides. His eyes were wide open and filled with anger. It looked a bit scary from afar. "Bess, was it you who withdrew the Imperial Guards?" He actually called Wang Fei by her name, and there wasn't the slightest bit of respect in his tone. It was even questioning. Wang Fei's expression darkened. She hadn't expected Prince Heli to come so quickly. She had only said a few words. Furthermore, Prince Heli's attitude toward her made her even angrier, but she didn't dare flare up. She continued to smile and said, "Prince Heli, you really came quickly. Answer my question." Prince Heli didn't want to waste words with her, and his attitude was very unyielding. Wang Fei's smile faded. She took out the king's order and pointed at Prince Heli. "What, does Prince Heli want to defy the king's order? Or are you already looking down on Wang Ling?" Prince Heli's face twitched a few times, and he shouted in a low voice, "Humph, even if you have the king's order, you can't get close to the Dark Thunder Guards at will. They're a major suspect in the assassination of His Majesty the King." "Nonsense. His Majesty the King's death has nothing to do with the Dark Thunder Guards. I can testify to that. Do you know that you almost made a big mistake and almost pushed our Zhu Road country into the abyss?" Wang Fei's tone also became unyielding. The princess is right. At that moment, an old man with white hair and a white beard walked in with a walking stick, accompanied by a group of people. He was Zhu Road country's elder, Chu Li. Lung Shiqi's eyes narrowed. The three forces vying for the throne of Zhu Road were now gathered, but the leader of the Gu God sect, Sang Hutong, and Prince Gus weren't here. Chu Li's appearance here was completely out of Wang Fei's and Prince Heli's expectations, but within Yu Ruifeng and Lung Shiqi's expectations. Chu Li's words shocked Wang Fei and Prince Heli at the same time. Judging from Chu Li's words, he seemed to be supporting Wang Fei. Chu Li ignored their astonishment. He looked straight at Yu Ruifeng and said, "Lord Yu and the Dark Thunder Guards never left the post house on the night of His Majesty's death, so how could they assassinate His Majesty? As for the witness, I think it was tampered with by someone, so it can't be taken seriously." Wang Fei's mood was very complicated. Chu Li's sudden appearance could suppress Prince Heli, but this way, the Dark Thunder Guards wouldn't only remember her benefits. She gritted her teeth and said, "That's right. I heard that the Dark Thunder Guards are best at investigating and solving cases. Why don't we trouble them to investigate the cause of His Majesty's death?" Prince Heli immediately shouted, "Impossible. I'm not asking for your opinion. Does Lord Yu think this is feasible?" Wang Fei directly asked Yu Ruifeng for his opinion. Yu Ruifeng's eyes swept over the three people present. Then he looked at Yuan Song and Lung Shiqi. He nodded. "Since the princess has spoken, it would be unsatisfactory if we refuse. But I don't know if the elder and Prince Heli will agree." Yu Ruifeng's words caused the three parties to have their own thoughts. Chapter 361. Bess Wangfei had the Dark Thunder Guards investigate the king's death, which surprised Prince Heli and Elder Chu Li. But they quickly realized that Bess Wangfei wanted to use this opportunity to win over the Dark Thunder Guards. All three sides wanted the Dark Thunder Guards' help, but it was clear that the Dark Thunder Guards could only choose one side. Now the peacemakers thought the Dark Thunder Guards were on their side. The warmongers thought the Dark Thunder Guards were spies they had planted in the peacemakers. Only Bess Wangfei hadn't clearly won over the Dark Thunder Guards, so she was the most anxious. But fortunately, Yu Ruifeng had given her a clear answer. What she needed to do next was to ensure that the Dark Thunder Guards could investigate the king's death. Then she would have many opportunities to contact the Dark Thunder Guards. Elder Chu Li was in a bit of a dilemma. His trip today was to lift the Dark Thunder Guards' house arrest and give them face. This point happened to coincide with Bess Wangfei, so he supported her from the beginning. But he didn't want to let the Dark Thunder Guards investigate the king's death. He had some understanding of the Dark Thunder Guards' abilities. If the Dark Thunder Guards really did intervene, they might be able to find the truth. But he had just stood on the Dark Thunder Guards' side, so he had no choice but to agree now. So he could only say, "This old man agrees with the Wangfei's proposal." Prince Heli was inferior, so he could only hold his face and silently nod. Bess Wangfei chuckled. "That is good. This matter should not be delayed. Please enter the palace as soon as possible, Lord Yu." "Don't worry, Wangfei. After we arrange things, we will enter the palace to investigate the truth of the king's death." When Yu Ruifeng said this, he noticed Leng Shiqi give him a look. Yu Ruifeng immediately looked at Prince Heli. "Prince Heli, since the Wangfei and Elder Chu Li can prove that the Dark Thunder Guards are not suspected of killing the king, then can my subordinate Guan Feihong be released?" Prince Heli snorted. Yes. Everyone saw that the matter was settled, so there was no need to stay. Before Chu Li and Prince Heli left, they both looked at Princess Bess. Although they didn't reveal anything in their eyes, the threat in their eyes was obvious. Since the princess consort dared to interfere in the fight for the throne, then don't blame them for being merciless. However, Bess had no other choice. She knew that she couldn't hide the fact that she was here, but she had to do it. In this way, she had indeed offended both the pro-war faction and the pro-peace faction. Perhaps she would be eliminated one day. However, if she didn't do anything, then no matter who ascended the throne, she would still be unable to escape death. Rather than waiting for death, why not take a gamble? After sending everyone away, Yu Ruifeng called Yuan Song and Leng Shiqi to discuss how to investigate the king's death, and how to deal with the three parties to achieve their goals. However, Leng Shiqi said, "Darren, I will not follow you into the palace." Yu Ruifeng looked at him in confusion, but he didn't ask because he knew that Leng Shiqi would explain it to him. "I'm ashamed to say that I've only joined the Dark Thunder Guards for a short period of time. I really don't have much experience in investigating cases. I believe that with you Darren and Yuan Darren, we will be able to solve this case quickly. Your humble servant would like to start from Guan Feihong's clues, and see what he encountered and discovered. If I'm not wrong, the person who planted the mind-controlling voodoo in him must be someone from the Gu God sect. This means that he has been in contact with the Gu God sect. We can inquire about the internal information of the Gu God sect through him." "All right." Yu Ruifeng immediately agreed. He had a grudge against the Gu God sect. Moreover, Leng Shiqi was right. The Dark Thunder Guards would enter the palace to investigate, so it didn't matter if he joined them. It was better to let Leng Shiqi out and start with Guan Feihong. Maybe they could find another clue. At noon, Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song took a few Dark Thunder Guards into the palace. Leng Shiqi waited for Guan Feihong in the post house for a while. Leng Shiqi pulled him into the room and began to carefully observe Guan Feihong. Although Leng Shiqi himself was also affected by the mind-controlling voodoo, it was removed by Jiu Li after that. Therefore, he wasn't very clear about the specific state of the affected person. At this moment, Guan Feihong was a little depressed, but there was nothing unusual. Leng Shiqi asked, "Old Guan, how do you feel?" Guan Feihong saw that Leng Shiqi even called him Old Guan. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but this made him feel a little familiar. He replied, Darren, this feeling is very strange. Last time you temporarily removed the mind-controlling voodoo. Now I know that I've been poisoned. I also have my own consciousness. However, once the person who cast the spell orders me, I can't control myself and regard the order as an oracle. No matter what, I have to complete it. I see. Leng Shiqi understood. Then can you tell me now what is your relationship with the Gu God sect? Guan Feihong smiled bitterly. He stopped himself from speaking. Actually, this subordinate is originally from Zhulu country. My father is from the Western Wilderness Prefecture, and my mother is from the Zhulu country. I inherited my father's appearance. When I was young, I was also a disciple of the Gu God sect. However, the Gu God sect was full of danger. The reason why my master accepted me was that he wanted to use me to refine voodoo. Later, I plotted to kill my master, but the matter was exposed. Therefore, I had to escape to the Western Wilderness Prefecture, and by chance, joined the Blood Cloak Pavilion. It turned out that Guan Feihong was an abandoned disciple of the Gu God sect. Leng Shiqi asked again. Then how did you get affected by the mind-controlling voodoo? Alas. Guan Feihong sighed slightly. This is my bad luck. Originally, I planned to go to the Gu God sect to inquire about the news. Who knew that I would run into the Gu God sect's leader, Sang Hetong? He didn't recognize my true identity, but he recognized my identity as a Dark Thunder Guard. Therefore, he thought of using me to provoke the Dark Thunder Guard and the Jingoist sect. Unexpectedly, he ran into Sang Hetong when he went out. Leng Shiqi had to admit that Guan Feihong's luck was really bad. Leng Shiqi tapped the table with his finger and thought quickly. Guan Feihong's mind-controlling voodoo was personally planted by Sang Hetong. Therefore, it would definitely not be used to provoke the Dark Thunder Guard and the Jingoist sect. Moreover, the Jingoist sect, led by Elder Chu Li and Sang Hetong, tried their best to lead the Dark Thunder Guard to Zhulu country. He was afraid that it was not as simple as a conflict with the Jingoist sect. While he was thinking, Guan Feihong's body suddenly stiffened and his eyes became hollow. Although he recovered in less than a breath's time, Leng Shiqi still noticed it. Chapter 362. Leng Shiqi saw Guan Feihong's strange behavior, and knew that Sang Hetong must have given Guan Feihong some orders. He hurriedly asked, Old Guan, what did Sang Hetong ask you to do? Guan Feihong's eyes were filled with confusion. Sang Hetong? He's not here. Why would he ask me to do something? Leng Shiqi frowned. He thought to himself, what a powerful mind-controlling voodoo. Fortunately, I had 9 leave by my side. Otherwise, I might not have been able to resist the control of the mind-controlling voodoo even if I had the mind illusion world. Then he said to Guan Hongfei, empty your mind and don't resist my mental power. Guan Feihong nodded silently. Then, Leng Shiqi used the same trick again, and cast a few illusions on Guan Feihong. This time, Guan Feihong gave up resisting, so it was easy to succeed. Guan Feihong immediately said, Sang Hetong asked me to find out if the Dark Thunder Guards and the Jingoist faction had fallen out. He also asked me to secretly stop the Dark Thunder Guards from investigating the king's death. Very good. Leng Shiqi was delighted. Find a chance to send a message to Sang He. Tell him that we and the Jingoist faction are like fire and water. As for the other matter, you can just drag it out slowly. Yes, master. Guan Feihong suddenly thought of something and said, right yesterday, Sang Hetong secretly brought a large number of experts from the Gu God sect into the King City. I don't know why. Leng Shiqi's heart jumped. Brought a large number of experts? What are their realms? They're all at the Sky Realm. I estimate that 80% of the Gu God sect's experts have been secretly arranged into the King City. So it's like this? Leng Shiqi murmured. His eyes were shining. He was thinking that since most of the Gu God sect's experts were not at the Gu God Peak, then he could fish in troubled waters. Leng Shiqi had always remembered that his main purpose in coming to Zhulu country was not to complete the Thunderblaze dynasty's mission, but to collect a large number of Gu worms. Now that the back of the Gu God Peak was empty, there probably weren't many experts above the Spirit Aperture realm, so he decided to go there. In any case, he now had the right to act on his own, so he decided to make this trip. After that, Guan Feihong told Leng Shiqi everything he knew about Gushan Peak. After that, he put on his mask and left the city. The Gu God Peak was only a few dozen miles away from the imperial city of the Zhu Road. Leng Shiqi used his ghost steps and arrived at the Gu God Peak at the beginning of the night. According to Guan Feihong's description, Gu God Peak actually had a sect protecting formation, which was created by the previous sect master with countless efforts. Normally, this formation wouldn't reveal itself, but if it was activated, the entire Gu God Peak would be shrouded in poisonous fog. What Leng Shiqi cared about the most was the place where the Gu worms were cultivated. It was on the mountainside of Gushan Peak, where there were several deep caves dedicated to cultivating Gu worms. This was also the destination of Leng Shiqi's trip, but there were always experts guarding the caves, which was troublesome. There were also 2 spirit transformation realm disciples guarding the entrance of the Gu God Peak. Leng Shiqi bypassed them and entered the Gu God Peak. He opened his Byakugan and observed the surrounding spiritual aura. Sure enough, he found that there were only a few spirit pulse realm cultivators below the mountainside of the Gu God Peak. He easily avoided one Gu God sect disciple after another, and went straight to the Gu Worm Cave. As he neared the mountainside, he immediately saw 2 auras of spirit aperture stage cultivators leaning against each other in the White-Eye's field of vision. These 2 must be the people guarding the Gu Worm nest. Leng Shiqi had opened 56 spirit veins, and had several powerful spiritual techniques. He was confident that he could fight against an early-stage spirit aperture realm cultivator. But if it was 1 against 2, it was impossible. Moreover, this was the Gu God Peak. Once a fight broke out, it would immediately attract other Gu God sect disciples. So he couldn't use force, he could only use his wits. Outside the Gu Worm Cave, there was a male and female spirit aperture realm cultivator sitting cross-legged. Their bodies were glowing with a faint green light. They were obviously cultivating. All of a sudden, a mass of gray evil chi ghost shadow flashed and disappeared. The 2 opened their eyes at almost the same time. The female said, "Where did this evil spirit come from? How dare it cause trouble at the Gu God Peak?" Junior sister Chengbai, wait a moment, I'll go check it out. The male next to her stood up. Chengbai's expression was calm. She didn't say anything and just lightly nodded. The male immediately rushed towards the direction where the evil ghost figure disappeared. After a moment, another person wearing a chaotic mask appeared. This was naturally Leng Shiqi. He stood out so openly. Chengbai's eyes suddenly burst out with a cold light. I knew it was a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain. I just happened to lack food for my Gu worms, so I'll use you to make up the numbers. Leng Shiqi said, "Senior sister, you misunderstood." "Who is your senior sister?" Chengbai's voice wasn't loud, but it made people feel as cold as winter. Leng Shiqi didn't say anything. He raised his hand and a green light flashed in his palm. There seemed to be a strange worm wriggling in the light. Chengbai's expression changed when she saw this. Gu Devouring Spirit Technique. How do you know the Gu Devouring Spirit Technique? Who the hell are you? Only the core disciples of the Gu God sect were qualified to cultivate this technique. Moreover, they had to be extremely talented disciples. Even Chengbai didn't have the opportunity to cultivate this technique. At this moment, she suddenly saw a stranger with the Gu Devouring Spirit Technique. How could she not be shocked? The technique was naturally passed down to me by the sect leader. It's not convenient for me to reveal my identity, but senior sister just needs to know that I'm not an outsider. Leng Shiqi said lightly. Chengbai showed a suspicious expression. She didn't believe Leng Shiqi's words, but the technique on his body couldn't be fake. There was no doubt that it was the Gu Devouring Spirit Technique. Chengbai asked, "In that case, what are you doing here?" "Of course, to get some Gu worms. Do you have the Gu God token?" Leng Shiqi's heart skipped a beat when he heard the words, Gu God token. He remembered that Guan Feihong had mentioned the Gu God token to him. He couldn't help laughing. "Senior sister, you must be joking. The Gu God token has always been in the hands of the sect leader. How can I have it?" Chengbai's eyes flashed. She didn't get the Gu God token? She continued, If you want to get the goo worms, you have to go into the goo worm cave to get rid of them. Do you dare to go in? Chengbai made a hand seal, and a small mound behind her split open, revealing a large hole. One could see that there were all kinds of goo worms inside, and it looked extremely terrifying. Lung Shiqi's face under the mask turned slightly pale. Since he dared to come here, he was naturally prepared. He immediately nodded and said, "Of course." Chapter 363. In fact, if a disciple came and went, they would at least need a token. However, Lung Shiqi didn't have anything. It was impossible to take the goo with just his mouth. Even if he had the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique, it was still impossible. Moreover, the disciple didn't need to enter the cave with the token. The person in charge of guarding the cave just needed to take out the goo according to the list on the token. The reason why Chengbai let Lung Shiqi enter was to test whether Lung Shiqi's 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique was real or not. After all, there were many strange things in this world. Maybe she could imitate the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique. Therefore, she also wanted to see if Lung Shiqi dared to enter the cave. Could he collect the goo after entering? 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique was a technique that specialized in controlling goo. With this technique, 10,000 goo couldn't invade. He would definitely be fine if he entered the cave. If this cultivation method was fake, then it would naturally be eaten to death by countless goo worms. Chengbai was a little surprised when she saw Lung Shiqi agree so readily. She secretly wondered if she was overthinking it. But out of caution, she still had to do this. After all, her senior brother had just left and Lung Shiqi appeared. This was too much of a coincidence. Under Chengbai's watchful gaze, Lung Shiqi walked into the goo worm cave. There was no place to stand, because everywhere he looked was filled with goo worms. Lung Shiqi used the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique, and instantly felt a sense of familiarity with the countless goo. Moreover, the goo no longer rejected Lung Shiqi. Instead, they happily rushed over. Looking at the countless goo of different colors, Lung Shiqi didn't reject them all. He had studied goo worms before. The goo worms that could be nurtured in this goo worm cave were all common goo worms. The truly precious goo worms had to be nurtured by oneself. And Lung Shiqi didn't need goo worms with offensive abilities. It would be best if they had all kinds of strange abilities. Thus, Lung Shiqi was also observing these goo worms. Soon, he found a group of purple goo worms that looked like spiders. This type of goo worm was called the poisonous spider goo. If it was used together with the goo spirit spider web, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Lung Shiqi waved his hand, and dozens of poisonous spider goo crawled up his arm, breaking through his skin and entering his body. Strangely, there was no wound on Lung Shiqi's arm, nor was there any blood. This was the unique characteristic of the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique, feeding the goo with one's own body. Seeing this, Chengbai was finally relieved. Although she didn't know Lung Shiqi's identity, the 10,000 goo devouring spirit skill was real. Next, Lung Shiqi discovered a type of goo called the meridian sucking goo. This type of goo would attach itself to the meridians after it entered the body, and continuously suck away at the meridians. However, it would not destroy the meridians for a short period of time. That kind of inhuman pain was enough to make one shudder in fear. This meridian-sucking goo could be used to replace the centipede curse. Then, Lung Shiqi chose the goo that he liked in the cave. As time passed, Chengbai's expression became more and more shocked. Because even if it was her, she could not stay in the goo worm cave for so long. At this time, the senior brother who just left also came back. He saw someone enter the cave and asked Chengbai, "Junior sister Cheng, who is that person?" Chengbai retracted her gaze and shook her head. "I don't know. But he has the 10,000 goo devouring spirit skill. He must be a disciple that some elder secretly took in." The senior brother was shocked when he heard that Lung Shiqi had the 10,000 goo devouring spirit skill, but his eyes immediately turned into unwillingness and greed. He said in a low voice, "Junior sister, this person has a shady background. The evil aura phantom that floated away just now might have been made by him. He wanted to lure me away." "I know." Chengbai's expression was slightly cold. The senior brother frowned. Then why did you let him enter the cave? This time, Chengbai ignored him. The senior brother's eyes flashed and he said in realization, so junior sister wants to use the cave to test whether he is real or not. Junior sister is really considerate. However, his identity is still too suspicious. I think we should still report this matter. If there is a problem, we won't be punished. Chengbai still didn't say anything and only nodded lightly. The senior brother's mouth twitched and he snorted. He didn't say anything else, but his eyes kept flickering as he stared at Leng Shiqi. After half an hour, Leng Shiqi had already hidden over 1,000 gu in his body. It wasn't until he couldn't store anymore that he reluctantly walked out. He saw the senior brother and sister as soon as he came out. He said, senior brother, senior sister, junior brother has already taken the gu, so I will take my leave. Wait! Senior brother suddenly shouted in a low voice. Leng Shiqi's footsteps paused and he turned around. Senior brother, what do you think? You don't have our sex identity token, nor do you have the gu token. Junior sister Cheng is magnanimous, and saw that you have the 10,000 gu devouring spirit skill, so she let you in. But if you don't give us a reason, don't even think about leaving. Speaking of this, the senior brother's eyes turned sinister. Leng Shiqi snorted coldly. I gave you face and called you senior brother. You are Lord Sect leader and are plotting something big, and I am a key part of it. As for my identity, if you really know my identity, I'm afraid even you will be killed. Do you still want to know? The senior brother was shocked by Leng Shiqi's words. He couldn't tell if Leng Shiqi was telling the truth or not. Sect leader Sang He Tong was indeed plotting something big recently, and he needed the help of an outsider. Could this person be a key part of the sect leader's plan? It's fine if you don't believe me. After Leng Shiqi finished speaking, a strange rhythm came from his mouth. When the gu worms in the gu worm cave heard this sound, they all wriggled out excitedly. Cheng and Bai exclaimed at the same time. Imperial gu demonic sound. Immediately after, they looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Imperial gu demonic sound was a spiritual technique that only spirit aperture realm cultivators in the gu god sect could cultivate. This spiritual technique's rank was 4th level, neither high nor low. However, it could control gu in a large area, so only spirit aperture realm cultivators could cultivate it. The two of them also knew this spiritual technique, but what shocked them the most was that Leng Shiqi's imperial gu demonic sound was even more profound than theirs. A spirit aperture realm cultivator not only had the 10,000 gu devouring spirit skill, but also the imperial gu demonic sound. Furthermore, his cultivation level was even higher than theirs. At the very least, he was at the large success stage. Such a person was definitely a genius disciple that the sect should focus on nurturing. Leng Shiqi said indifferently, now you should believe me. Chapter 364. Leng Shiqi used the perfect imperial demonic sound to shock Qingbai and Chengbai. Seeing that they didn't say anything, he said, senior brothers and sisters, if there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Chengbai didn't say anything. The senior brother frowned and seemed to be hesitating. Finally, he cupped his hands and said, junior brother, take care. Leng Shiqi walked past the two, but Chengbai was a little surprised by the senior brother's decision. When Leng Shiqi's figure completely disappeared, the senior brother said, junior sister Cheng, senior brother has something to do. Please don't take offense. Chengbai instantly guessed what he was going to do. Senior brother Zhaoying, there are some things that you shouldn't care about. Zhao Ying's expression changed slightly. He squeezed out 2 stiff smiles and said, I'm just going back to get something. Do as you wish. Zhao Ying looked in the direction Leng Shiqi left and quickly chased after him. After Leng Shiqi left, he knew that he wouldn't be able to get away so easily. However, since he had already completed the most important goal of this trip, he just needed to leave Gu God Peak as soon as possible. At that moment, he opened his supercilious eyes and instantly discovered Zhao Ying, who was rushing towards him. Leng Shiqi immediately used the ghostly spring steps and turned into a shadow. His speed was even faster than Zhao Ying, who was at the spirit aperture stage. However, things didn't go so smoothly. After a short while, A group of more than 10 people appeared in front of Leng Shiqi and blocked his way. As a result, Leng Shiqi had no choice but to sink into the ground. He was already familiar with this kind of operation. However, at that moment, something unexpected happened. Not long after Leng Shiqi sank into the ground, he accidentally triggered a restriction. Suddenly, there was a flash of golden light around him. Then, before he could resist, he was directly enveloped by the golden light and pulled into the array. Leng Shiqi suddenly felt dizzy. However, he wasn't unfamiliar with this feeling. This was clearly something like a teleportation array. There was actually a teleportation formation hidden under the Gushin peak. After the Leng Shiqi disappeared, Zhaoying hurried over. His footsteps paused as he lowered his head and muttered with a frown. Strange, the goo worm's aura suddenly disappeared here? Don't tell me that person can disappear into thin air? At this time, a group of Gu God sect's disciples walked over. When they saw Zhaoying, they all saluted. Zhaoying immediately asked, "Have you seen a person wearing a mask?" Disciple did not see him. Zhao Ying's face immediately turned ashen. No, I must report this to the sect leader. As for Leng Shiqi, he only felt the ground beneath his feet disappear. And then he came to a world of golden glass. He looked around and found that the golden light all came from the golden lakes that were everywhere. It was the surface of the lakes that reflected the golden light. He immediately opened the system map, but it was pitch black. This meant that he couldn't use fate to escape. Leng Shiqi's heart sank. However, since he came here for no reason, he had to find a way to escape as soon as possible. He squinted his eyes and saw a person sitting in the middle of the endless golden lake. From afar, the person's figure was as thin as a stick. His hair was disheveled, and his appearance could not be seen clearly. However, Leng Shiqi felt that this person's aura was similar to eunuch Gao's. This person was probably an expert in the unity of heaven and man realm. However, this person's hands and feet were bound by pale green chains. These chains were only as thick as a finger and did not look very sturdy. Come here. An old voice came from the person's mouth. Leng Shiqi did not move. Instead, he took out the black jade sword. 90 demonic patterns climbed onto the sword's blade, and the spiritual energy in his body circulated. He was ready to activate the demonic beast blood pattern armor at any time. Humph, the person snorted. To Leng Shiqi's horror, the demonic patterns on the sword's blade suddenly disappeared. Not only that, but more than half of the goo insects that he had just collected in his body died in an instant. This made his heart ache, and at the same time, he deeply understood how terrifying this person was. At this point, Leng Shiqi simply put away the black jade sword and walked in front of the person. He cupped his fists and said, "Greetings, senior." The person raised his head, revealing two completely different eyes. One of his eyes was pale green, and it was filled with a fierce light. The other eye had a faint golden light, and it was filled with kindness. Umitba. This old man inadvertently killed hundreds of goo insects. It is a sin. This brat dares to show hostility to this leader. He deserves to die. These two sentences came out of the person's mouth one after another. Although the voice was the same, the tone was completely different. Leng Shiqi's eyebrows, which were hidden under the mask, twitched slightly. He thought to himself, does this person have schizophrenia? What he found strange was that this person could actually say Umitba. Wasn't this something that only Buddhist disciples in his previous life would say? This old man is called Tu Deng, and I am the previous leader of the Gu God sect. I am also the founder of the Gu God sect. The Gu God sect is mine. This person's two consciousnesses spoke again, and these words shocked Leng Shiqi. So this person was actually the founder of the Gu God sect. Seeing Tu Deng imprisoned here, Leng Shiqi secretly guessed that the current leader, Sang Hetong, and Tu Deng definitely had some unspeakable secret. It was most likely that Sang Hetong wanted to usurp the throne, and he wanted to obtain something from Tu Deng, so he imprisoned him here. Tu Deng closed his green eyes, but that eye was still trembling. He said, "If you want to escape, let me talk to little friend." Only then did that eye calm down. Tu Deng's golden eyes immediately brightened. "Little friend, how should I address you?" Junior Lu Xingji. Leng Shiqi did not say his real name, nor did he make it up. Little friend Lu, I'm sure you've already guessed it. This old man brought you here in hopes that you can help this old man escape. Leng Shiqi hesitated for a moment before saying, Junior's cultivation is shallow. I do not know why Senior thinks I can do it. Tu Deng smiled, but perhaps he had not smiled for a long time. This smile was not only very stiff, it even looked a little scary. He said, that unfilial disciple of mine, Sang Hetong, set up 3 seals here. The first one is these chains on my body. After several decades of research, this old man has found a way to break these chains. But once I break these chains, I will activate the second restriction, which is this boundless lake. Leng Shiqi looked around, but did not see anything special about this golden lake. Actually, this lake contains countless gold thread goo. Gold thread goo is a very special goo worm. Its existence can restrain 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique. If I break these chains, the countless gold thread goo will surge over and devour me. But all things in the world have a counter, and metal attribute cultivation methods can restrain gold thread goo. Saying so, Tu Deng looked at Leng Shiqi with a burning gaze. Leng Shiqi's heart tightened. It seemed like his secret was seen through. Wasn't the extreme gold mystic yang technique? He cultivated a metal attribute cultivation method? But he was surprised that he was clearly using 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique. But the other party could see that he also cultivated a metal attribute cultivation method. He thought deeper. Would Tu Deng be able to tell that he had cultivated even more techniques? Chapter 365. Tu Deng did not know what Leng Shiqi was thinking. He continued, as for the third restriction, it is this world. This is a small-scale alternate space that I discovered by chance. That is why I built the Gu Divine sect here. This space originally had an exit, but now the exit has been sealed by Sang Hetong. Although this old man can attempt to break the seal, Sang Hetong will definitely detect it. Thus, I thought of setting up a teleportation formation. Unfortunately, this formation needs someone to operate it from the other side to bring me out. At this point, Tu Deng stopped and Leng Shiqi understood what he meant. Tu Deng had a way to break the first restriction, but he needed Leng Shiqi to block the golden silk goo and bring Tu Deng out from the outside. But what about after bringing him out? This was a Heaven Man Unity Realm mighty expert. After going out, he could casually kill him. As if he saw Leng Shiqi's apprehension, Tu Deng spoke again. But this time, Tu Deng's mouth did not move. His voice directly entered Leng Shiqi's ears. Little friend, don't worry. I have already sworn that I will never kill again. But my evil thoughts will definitely not let little friend off, so little friend still needs to help me get rid of the other consciousness. Back then, when I was sealed here, my heart was filled with hatred. I only thought of revenge and gradually lost myself in hatred. Later, to escape, I created a metal attribute cultivation method, but metal attribute cultivation methods conflicted with 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique. They could not coexist. Thus, I comprehended a secret technique that allowed me to split my consciousness into 2 halves, separating all of my negative and dark emotions. That was how I formed my evil thoughts. However, the problem came along with it. Not only were we unable to coexist, but we were also constantly fighting for control of the body. If this continued, we would sooner or later perish together. I do not desire to live forever, but if I let the evil thoughts out, it will cause endless slaughter and sin. Unfortunately, even though I have the ability to kill him, I cannot do it. Thus I can only trouble little friend. Leng Shiqi knew that Tu Deng's consciousness was split into good and evil thoughts. The one talking to him now was the good thoughts. This secret method was similar to his mind-splitting technique. Moreover, this good thoughts wanted to get rid of the evil thoughts. What shocked him was that Tu Deng kept talking about creating cultivation methods and secret techniques. He didn't take cultivation methods seriously at all. Furthermore, he was clearly trapped here, but he could still set up a teleportation formation. This ability was simply unheard of. Leng Shiqi's mind flashed with thousands of thoughts. If he could really get rid of the evil thoughts, it would be beneficial to him. His chances of survival would be higher. Regardless of whether this good thoughts Tu Deng was speaking the truth or not, At least, he was much better than the evil thoughts. Thus he said, Junior does not know what can I do to help Senior. By saying this he had agreed to free Tuden, and also agreed to help him get rid of his evil thoughts. However, Lung Shiqi did not know he had this ability. Tu Deng's good thoughts nodded. Little friend only needs to do two things. After this old man breaks the chains, use your 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique to attract the attention of the golden silk Gu. Then use a metal type cultivation method to block the golden silk Gu. Little friend only needs to last 3 to 4 breaths of time. After that, this old man will send little friend out. Then little friend will use a secret method to bring me out. Lung Shiqi asked, Senior, aren't you afraid that this junior will run away after going out? Tu Deng smiled again, you won't. Why does Senior trust me so much? Lung Shiqi was also very confused. Because this old man has the complete 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique. This is a rank 8 cultivation method that can be cultivated to the heaven origin realm. Rank 8 cultivation method. Even with Lung Shiqi's strong will, he could not help but be moved. One had to know that the Blood Slaughter 7 Fiend art he cultivated was only a rank 7 cultivation method. Although he also had the 5 God Flowing Light art and the 1000 Reincarnation Illusory World art, these two cultivation methods might not be lower than rank 8. However, these two cultivation methods were not complete. The 5 God Flowing Light art needed to break through a large realm to obtain the next level of the cultivation method. As for the next level of the 1000 Reincarnation Illusory World art, it was also in Oziu's mind. Therefore, a complete rank 8 cultivation method was indeed very attractive to Lung Shiqi. However, Lung Shiqi still had a trace of doubt. Is Senior speaking the truth? Tu Deng said. Of course, this old man never lies, because the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique was created by me. The reason why Sang Hutong did not kill me was because he wanted to obtain the last level of the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique from me. This old man also cultivated the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique and the metal type cultivation method, so I could sense little friend's aura. Hiss. When Lung Shiqi heard this, he could not help but secretly gasp. Tu Deng was actually the creator of the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique. This was a person who could create a rank 8 cultivation method. Just now, when Tu Deng said that he had created the metal type cultivation method and the secret method to separate consciousness, Lung Shiqi was only slightly surprised, but now, his heart was truly shaken. Lung Shiqi immediately said in a clear voice, this junior will definitely help Senior Tu Deng escape. Good. Tu Deng nodded and said, this old man will teach you the method to control the teleportation formation. Tu Deng stretched out his hand, and a wisp of golden light entered Lung Shiqi's forehead. Immediately, 2 sets of chants appeared in Lung Shiqi's mind. One set was naturally the chants to control the teleportation formation, while the other was the secret method to wipe out evil thoughts. This secret method was called the Void Annihilation Divine Blade, specialized in cutting all kinds of illusory spiritual bodies, primordial spirits, souls, and thoughts. Seeing this Void Annihilation Divine Blade, Lung Shiqi's eyes kept flickering. Perhaps he would also need this secret method in the near future. At this moment, in his opinion, the Void Annihilation Divine Blade was even more important than the complete 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique. Lung Shiqi said, Senior, please wait for a moment. This junior needs to practice this technique first. Tu Deng smiled kindly. No problem. The method to control the teleportation formation is a bit complicated, and this old man has been trapped here for decades. A little while won't make a difference, little friend. You can slowly learn it. Then Lung Shiqi didn't say anything, and directly sat down cross-legged. He used his unlimited skill points to instantly learn the teleportation formation method. However, he didn't use his skill points to learn the Void Annihilation Divine Blade. Instead, he relied on his own ability to learn this secret method. This was because if he used his unlimited skill points, it was equivalent to borrowing the power of the system. This Void Annihilation Divine Blade was one of his trump cards against the system in the future. Of course, he had to learn it himself. After nearly a day, Lung Shiqi finally completely understood the Void Annihilation Divine Blade. He opened his eyes and said, Senior, we can begin. Chapter 366. Tu Deng was surprised to see Leng Shiqi comprehending 2 spells in half a day. At this time, the evil thought ran out and said, "Just a mere teleportation formation spell. You took so long to learn it, truly stupid." Leng Shiqi coughed dryly. He put on an act and said with an awkward tone, "Junior's aptitude is slow. I have embarrassed myself in front of senior." Tu Deng's good thought said, "Then let's begin." Leng Shiqi silently retreated until he was dozens of feet away. Next, golden and green runes appeared on Tu Deng's body. These runes quickly crawled onto the chains that were trapping him. Soon after, the chains began to shake rapidly, making ding-ding-dang-dang-dang sounds. Not only that, but patterns that resembled goo worms also appeared on the chains. Leng Shiqi squinted. He could see that Tu Deng's strength was much stronger than the chains. It was only a matter of time before Tu Deng broke free. However, just as Tu Deng broke free of the chains, ripples suddenly appeared on the golden lake beneath their feet. Countless buzzing sounds came from below the lake. It seemed like something was coming out. Tu Deng suddenly shouted, "Not good. The golden silk goo is more sensitive than before. Little friend Lu, this old man still needs at least half an incense stick's worth of time to succeed. You must hold on." Leng Shiqi's eyes twitched. Tu Deng said he only needed to hold on for a few breaths of time. But now it was extended to 15 minutes. Although those golden silk goo had not completely come out, Leng Shiqi could feel the terrifying aura of goo worms surrounding him. Leng Shiqi was anxious, but he did not panic. He said, "Senior, this is not the price we agreed on. Give me the method to cultivate and remove mind-controlling goo." Tu Deng did not expect Leng Shiqi to still have the mind to bargain at this time. But since Leng Shiqi dared to say this, it meant he had some confidence. Tu Deng immediately agreed. Next, Leng Shiqi activated the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique with all his might, his body emitting traces of green light. All of the golden silk goo were attracted by the aura of the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique, and surged towards Leng Shiqi like waves. Even Leng Shiqi felt his scalp turning numb when he saw these countless golden silk goo. Soon after, he changed his cultivation method, and at the same time, circulated the golden mystic yang art. The light on his body also became a mixture of gold and green like Tu Deng's. Leng Shiqi raised his palms to the sky. Dense golden light gathered, and a golden sun appeared in this space. Bright sun mystic yang palm. However, Leng Shiqi did not strike out with his palm. Instead, he kept it in his hand. Countless golden thread goo wriggled over, but before they could even get close, they were turned into ashes by the golden radiance. However, Leng Shiqi was also using the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique, constantly attracting the golden silk goo. They were like moths flying into a flame, one after another, but in the end, they all disappeared from the world. When Tu Deng saw this scene, he was slightly surprised. With his experience, he could see that Leng Shiqi had already cultivated the glorious sun mystic yang palm to the great perfection stage. That was why he was able to store it and not release it, and it didn't consume too much spiritual energy. Soon after, his expression became relaxed. Leng Shiqi's state attracted almost all of the golden thread goo, and as long as he had enough spirit energy, not to mention half an incense's time, he could even hold on for an hour. He could not help but think, I underestimated him. Thus, Tu Deng's good and evil thoughts began to break free from the shackles of the chains. Time passed quickly, but it also passed slowly, because Leng Shiqi was consuming large amounts of spirit energy at every moment. Although he had cultivated the glorious sun mystic yang palm to perfection, it was still a rank 5 spirit technique. With his current cultivation, using it for a long time was still a bit taxing. At this moment, his forehead was already covered in sweat. Fortunately, he also heard a bang sound. Following that, several similar sounds were heard. Leng Shiqi knew that Tu Deng had succeeded. Sure enough, Tu Deng raised his arms and rose from the ground. His whole body emitted a soaring aura. What was even more shocking was that his figure actually stopped in midair, and did not descend. Standing in the air, Leng Shiqi's eyes narrowed. This was clearly an ability that only a Sky Yuan realm expert could have, but Tu Deng could actually do it. Tu Deng said to Leng Shiqi, "Little friend Lu, it's done. I'll send you to the outside world now." "Wait." Lung Shiqi shook his head. Then he stopped using the 10,000 gu spirit-devouring technique and put away the glorious sun mystic yang palm. Instantly, countless golden silk gu rushed over. Lung Shiqi's expression did not change. He stretched out his hand and took the initiative to absorb hundreds of golden silk gu into his body. When he had just arrived here, most of the gu worms that he had painstakingly selected from the gu worm cave were killed by Tuding's evil thoughts. Now he could replenish them. Moreover, although this golden silk gu was very weak and could be restrained by metal attribute cultivation methods, it could also restrain the 10,000 gu spirit-devouring technique. He was now involved in the conspiracy of the gu god sect's leader, Sang He Tong. He might encounter people who cultivated this technique in the future. At that time, this golden silk gu would be one of his trump cards. Tuding did not say anything. After Lung Shiqi collected enough golden silk gu, Tuding's hands continuously formed seals on Lung Shiqi's body. Little friend Lu needs to teleport me out as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the golden silk gu finds me, I will die. Lung Shiqi nodded silently. Then he felt the world spinning and returned to the outside world. When Lung Shiqi went out, he found that he had already left the gu god peak. But he was not too far away because the gu god peak was still in his vision. It was estimated to be about 10 miles away. Looking at the sky, it should be the afternoon of the second day. At this time, Lung Shiqi was not in a hurry to teleport Tuding out. Instead, he used his fastest speed to set up a lightning destruction formation and hundreds of golden silk gu. He could not fully believe Tuding's words. Now that he had returned to the outside world, the system map could be used normally. He could also activate the destiny skill. If Tuding kept his word and gave him the cultivation method, it would be fine. But if Tuding wanted to kill him, the lightning destruction formation and golden silk gu could buy him some time. As long as he could hold on for a breath's time, he could teleport away. After he arranged everything, his hands started to form seals. Then a small formation appeared in front of him. Following that, Tuding's figure appeared. As soon as he came out, Shan Nian winked at Lung Shiqi. Chapter 367. The moment Tu Deng appeared, the evil intention's eyes flashed with green light. He stared at Lung Shiqi with killing intent. Meanwhile, Tu Deng Shan's eyes suddenly released golden light. He shot out a golden light that enveloped an area of 10 zhang. He shouted, "Little friend Lu, quickly!" Lung Shiqi did not hesitate. His mental power surged out, directly invading Tu Deng's mental space. Logically speaking, with Lung Shiqi's cultivation and mental power strength, he should not be able to invade the mental space of a unity of heaven realm. However, Tu Deng Shan's mind emptied and allowed Lung Shiqi in. And in Tu Deng's mental space, there were two figures facing each other. One of them was filled with negative emotions such as resentment, anger, and revenge. The other was suffused with a faint golden light, giving people the feeling of being bathed in spring breeze. These two figures were Tu Deng's evil intention and good intention. Tu Deng's evil intention roared malevolently. "What is the meaning of this? It is impossible to get rid of me. You and I are equal in strength. Neither of us can do anything to the other. Quickly let me kill that brat. It has been too long since I tasted meat. I am too hungry." Tu Deng Shan's evil intention sighed deeply. "This is the old me from back then, being trapped for a few decades. Perhaps it is heaven's punishment for me. I should be punished. You are right, I will not kill you, but there is someone else who can." The moment he finished, Lung Shiqi's figure appeared between the two of them. Tu Deng's evil intention's expression changed. He said crazily, You actually emptied your mind. Do you want to die?" "No, the one who should die is you. AI, it is not that this old man cannot kill you. It is that I cannot do it. You are a part of me. Even if you are filled with evil, you still have your own consciousness. This old man has already decided not to kill anyone, so I will have to trouble little friend Lu to do it." "Aha!" The evil intention laughed wildly. "Hypocrite to the extreme. Did you not kill many people back then? In order to make the Gu God sect the national religion of Zhulu country, you have personally massacred several sects. Now you are showing fake mercy. Disgusting. Besides, Even if this sect master was standing here, this brat wouldn't be able to kill me. The good spirit suddenly formed a spiritual seal with one hand, and a stream of light instantly connected him and the evil spirit together. The evil spirit's body stiffened, and it couldn't move. No matter how he struggled, he maintained the same posture as kindness. Goodness closed its eyes, as if it did not want to see the end of evil spirit. Lung Shiqi walked in front of the evil spirit. The evil spirit couldn't move now, but it still smiled at Lung Shiqi and said, "Ignorant boy, you can't kill me. When I get out, I will eat you alive." Lung Shiqi didn't say anything. He used his palm as a knife and gently swung it down. He didn't see him wave anything, but a black line as thin as a hair suddenly appeared in the space between him and the evil spirit. The black line continued to extend until it reached the back of the evil spirit. What was even more strange was that the space near the evil spirit was actually separated. Like a mirror that was split in half, the upper half and the lower half staggered. And the person in the mirror was also split in half. The evil spirit was easily split in half. This was the Void Destruction Divine Blade. The evil spirit's grin instantly froze, and then his figure began to dissipate. His face was full of endless resentment. He opened his mouth wide, but he couldn't make a sound, and finally completely dissipated. Lung Shiqi was also a bit stunned. He also couldn't believe that he killed the evil spirit so easily. At the same time, he also had greater expectations for the Void Destruction Divine Blade. Goodness opened his eyes, but at this time, his eyes were full of sadness and a bit of regret. He said weakly, "Little friend Lu, you can go out first." Lung Shiqi nodded, and then he withdrew his spirit power, and his consciousness returned to his body. And he unexpectedly found that Tu Deng's aura was rapidly falling. Even the realm of unity of heaven and man was a bit unstable. "Senior, this is?" Tu Deng waved his hand and said, "The evil spirit is a part of me. Cutting off the evil spirit is equivalent to cutting off a part of my cultivation. But since it can solve a big problem and prevent people from dying, a mere cultivation is nothing." Hearing Tu Deng's words, Lung Shiqi felt a bit strange. It wasn't that Tu Deng was strange, but that Tu Deng gave him a familiar feeling. This feeling was like those senior monks in his previous life. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi's heart moved. He immediately remembered that there were hundreds of Buddhist scriptures in his mustard seed bracelet. These Buddhist scriptures were very compatible with Tu Deng, causing a different kind of thought to emerge in his mind. Lung Shiqi cupped his hands and asked, "Senior, since you have escaped, do you want to get rid of Sang and Tong and take back the Gu God sect?" If Tu Deng really had this idea, Lung Shiqi felt that they could work together to deal with Sang and Tong. If Tu Deng didn't have this idea, then it would confirm Lung Shiqi's thought. Tu Deng sighed slightly and said, "This old man's hatred for Sang and Tong has dissipated along with the evil spirit. Moreover, the Gu God sect is just a worldly possession. This old man only wants to wander the world and do good deeds to make up for the sins this old man has committed in the past." Hearing this, Lung Shiqi felt that Tu Deng really had the demeanor of a senior monk. Thus, he took out the first part of the Vajraprajna Paramitha Sutra and gave it to Tu Deng. Tu Deng took it with a slightly puzzled expression. He didn't know why Lung Shiqi did this, but when he casually flipped to a page, his eyes suddenly focused as if he was attracted by the contents. As Tu Deng watched, he gradually became immersed. Lung Shiqi's eyes revealed a look of interest. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back and waited quietly at the side. Next, there was only the sound of the book being flipped. There wasn't much content in this Buddhist sutra, but Tu Deng read it very carefully. It took him a long time to finish reading. But to Lung Shiqi's surprise, Tu Deng actually started reading again. After repeating this several times, just when Lung Shiqi was a little impatient, Tu Deng finally raised his head. At this moment his eyes were full of excitement. He said in surprise, this book can be called a divine book. This old man has never heard of it before, but this old man faintly feels that this is the direction this old man is pursuing. Little friend Lu, where did you get this divine book? Do you have anything else?" Lung Shiqi didn't answer, but changed the topic and said, "Senior Tu Deng, let's not talk about this book for now. Shouldn't we complete the last part of the deal?" Of course, he was referring to the complete 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique, as well as the method to refine and remove the mind control Gu. Tu Deng patted his head without caring about his image and said, "This old man was confused, little friend, please don't resist." Saying so, he pointed a finger and a golden light entered between Lung Shiqi's eyebrows like last time. He directly sent the things he agreed to into Lung Shiqi's mind. Lung Shiqi accepted this information and smiled in satisfaction. Meeting Tu Deng was an accident, but his harvest was also not bad. Little friend, this old man knows that you must have the follow-up to the Vajra Prajna Paramitha Sutra. Although this book isn't a cultivation method or spirit technique, this old man likes it. How about this? This old man will make another deal with you. Lung Shiqi smiled, of course. Chapter 368. Lung Shiqi and Tu Deng quickly came to an agreement. Lung Shiqi also got what he wanted, so he gave the complete set of Vajra Prajna Paramitha Sutra to Tu Deng. This Buddhist sutra was completely useless in his hands, so if he could exchange it for some benefits, he could be considered to have profited greatly. As for Tu Deng, it was as if he had obtained a treasure. He directly ignored Lung Shiqi and immersed himself in the world of the scriptures. As for Lung Shiqi, he felt a little awkward. He coughed dryly and said, "Then this junior will take his leave." Tu Deng waved his hand, and a door opened in the golden light that enveloped them. Lung Shiqi's eyes flashed. He took back the golden silk Gu that was hidden underground and left. During this process, Tu Deng didn't even raise his head. After walking out of the light, Lung Shiqi turned around. Where was the golden light behind him? There was only a ball of air. Lung Shiqi immediately used ghostly spring steps to leave this place. Then he used the destiny skill to teleport back to the imperial city. He was quite satisfied with this trip to Gushin Peak. First of all, he collected many Gu worms with different abilities. Although Tu Deng's matter was an accident, the result was that he earned a rank 8 cultivation method. This complete 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique was very profound, but it wasn't very compatible with Lung Shiqi. Thus, he didn't plan to cultivate it as his main cultivation method. The only pity was that he didn't get any valuable information. Lung Shiqi immediately used the destiny skill. The system map was infinitely enlarged, and the entire imperial city and Gushin Peak were within his teleportation range. Just as he was about to teleport back to the imperial city, a familiar yet unfamiliar figure appeared. That was Emo Huaishou. Or rather, Princess Carol. Lung Shiqi continued to enlarge the system map. He found that Emo Huaishou wasn't wearing that strange mask. He could even clearly see that Emo Huaishou's beautiful face had some anxiety as she rushed towards Gushin Peak. After he found out that Emo Huaishou was the princess of Zhulu country, he specially went to find out more about the princess. Emo Huaishou, or rather Princess Carol, was the only child of the king and Fei Wang. The current king did not have any sons in his life. He only had this one daughter, which could be considered a miracle. Thus, the king and his wife had always doted on Princess Carol. Since she was interested in the art of Gu, they had Imperial Preceptor Sang Hutong take her in as a disciple and teach her the supreme art of Gu. She loved to travel, so he spent a large amount of resources to create a mysterious mask for her that could change her appearance, allowing her to walk freely in the Thunderblaze dynasty. It could be said that he was doted on by thousands of people. However, now that the king had died suddenly, and the princess consort had intervened in the battle for the throne, she was in a precarious situation, and her position as a princess was about to come to an end. Lung Shiqi found it strange that yesterday, Yu Ruifeng and the others entered the palace to investigate the king's death. Today, Princess Carol rushed to Gugad Peak in a hurry. Could there be a connection between the two? Then Lung Shiqi's eyes turned, and his body was teleported to the path that Emo Huaishou had to pass through. After landing on the ground, he took off his mask. Crackling sounds could be heard from his body, and his body became even thinner. He put on the human skin mask of Zhuoqiu and began to wait for Emo Huaishou's arrival. Not long after, Princess Carol galloped over on a divine spirit horse. However, she suddenly pulled on the reins. Whoa! The horse raised its 2 hooves and paused in midair for a few seconds before landing. Princess Carol's blue eyes were filled with vigilance. Her clear voice rang out. Who's sneaking around? Ha ha ha, I didn't expect Princess Carol to be so vigilant. I admire you. A figure emerged from the ground in front of Princess Carol. It was Lung Shiqi in disguise. Princess Carol's face darkened when she saw Lung Shiqi's appearance. Lung Shiqi's current appearance was Wuxia. Although it wasn't his original appearance, she could tell that he wasn't from Zhulu country at a glance. When Princess Carol saw that Lung Shiqi's cultivation was only at the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, her eyes flashed with disdain. However, she didn't lower her vigilance. This was because she had met 3 Spirit Pulse realm cultivators, who could fight against Spirit Aperture realm cultivators in the West Desolate Province's Mist Chi City. However, she had important matters to attend to and didn't want to delay. She said coldly, I don't care who you are, or why you're waiting for me here. I only have one thing to say. If you don't move, you'll die. However, Lung Shiqi turned a deaf ear to her words and still stood there without moving. Princess Carol's eyes shot out waves of killing intent. She pointed her fingers, and rays of green light intertwined to form a giant net that attacked. Lung Shiqi formed a seal with one hand and his entire body emitted a dense underworld cold aura. It formed a 3-meter-tall strange handprint that brazenly fell down. This was a rank 5 spiritual skill from the Cold Underworld Treasure Manual, Cold Underworld Giant Handprint. The Cold Underworld Giant Handprint brought with it a boundless cold aura. In 2 breaths of time, it shattered Princess Carol's green net, and continued to press forward. Lung Shiqi had opened up a few more spirit veins compared to the last time they fought outside Mist Chi City. In addition, he cultivated the Cold Underworld Treasure Manual, a rank 5 cultivation technique. His spirit energy was even denser than before. In terms of strength, he wasn't inferior to a Spirit Aperture realm cultivator. Princess Carol's expression finally changed. She had never expected the Cold Underworld Giant Handprint to be so powerful. What she didn't expect was that she would meet a Spirit Pulse realm cultivator, whose strength was comparable to a Spirit Aperture realm cultivator today. Princess Carol stepped on the stirrups and her figure soared into the sky like a white crane. Suddenly, hundreds of goo worms appeared behind her and formed a pair of flesh wings. She paused in the air for a few breaths of time, causing Lung Shiqi's Cold Underworld Giant Handprint to only hit the spirit horse. The spirit horse's corpse was instantly frozen, but this ice was grayish-black and was still constantly devouring the spirit horse's corpse. In the blink of an eye, only bones were left of the spirit horse. What a vicious cultivation technique. Princess Carol's eyes became more dignified. She had to re-examine the person who stopped her. Lung Shiqi was also a little surprised when he saw the pair of wings on Princess Carol's back. He remembered that she didn't have such a technique the last time they met outside the Mist Chi City. It seemed like she had just cultivated it recently. Lung Shiqi changed his voice and said, Princess Carol's temper is so irritable. You've lost your dignity as a princess. Princess Carol frowned. She wasn't in King City for many years. Even if she did appear, she rarely showed her true face. It could be said that there were very few people who knew her true identity. However, Lung Shiqi had revealed her identity. How could she not be shocked? Who are you? Why did you stop me? She asked with a heavy tone. Lung Shiqi smiled. I am Zhuqiu. I came here while traveling. I suddenly heard that His Majesty the King had passed away. So I came here to save Her Highness the Princess. Save me? What a joke. Of course, I can also harm the princess. Oh no, I should say the great thief Don't Huisho. When Lung Shiqi said this, Princess Carol turned pale with fright. Chapter 369. When Princess Carol heard Lung Shiqi's words, a huge wave was set off in her heart. If there were only a few people who knew her true appearance, then there was only one person who knew that she was Mo Huisho. That was her mother, Princess Bess. Other than that, there was no third person who knew about this. More importantly, if this news reached the ears of the Dark Thunder Guards, then the Princess Bess would completely become the Dark Thunder Guard's enemy. It would even implicate the entire Zhulu country. The consequences were simply unimaginable. Princess Carol looked deeply at Leng Shiqi, boundless killing intent rising in her heart. Leng Shiqi gave a mysterious smile and said, "Princess Carol, or Mo Huisho, the information I have is far beyond your imagination. If I'm not wrong, the Dark Thunder Guards entered the palace yesterday to investigate the cause of the king's death. I'm afraid that they found out about the Princess Bess." Princess Bess really lifted a stone and smashed it on her own foot. "Of course, you can also try to kill me if you can." Princess Carol increasingly felt that the person in front of her was very mysterious. It seemed that there was nothing he didn't know. Many people knew that the Dark Thunder Guards entered the palace, but the results of their investigation showed that no more than 10 people knew about it. How did the other party find out about all these extremely secretive matters? How did he find out about all of this? Leng Shiqi looked at Princess Carol's expression and knew that he had guessed correctly. He had been at Gugad Peak for more than a day. How could he know about the palace? He just linked all the things together and made a judgment. Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Song were both outstanding talents in the Dark Thunder Guards. Otherwise, they wouldn't have their current high positions. After entering the palace, they must have found some clues that were unfavorable to the Princess Bess. Otherwise, why would Princess Carol leave the city in such a panic? The Princess Bess was her only support now, so something that could make her panic must have happened to the Princess Bess. The killing intent in Princess Carol's heart grew stronger. She said, "What do you want?" "As I said earlier, I can help your highness or harm Mo Huisho," Leng Shiqi said. "The choice is actually in your highness' hands." Princess Carol's expression changed several times. The feeling of being manipulated was very uncomfortable. She was also in a hurry to go to the Gugad Peak, and didn't want to delay any longer. However, Leng Shiqi's words gave her too much shock and threat, so she had no choice but to stop here. She said with a sullen face, "I naturally hope that your excellency can help me, but I don't know how your excellency will help me. And what do you need me to pay?" Leng Shiqi straightened his sleeves and said leisurely, "This one is helping Princess Carol keep all of this a secret." "Isn't this helping Her Highness?" Princess Carol finally understood. It turned out that this person was here to get something without risking anything. She gritted her teeth and said hatefully, "What do you want, Your Excellency? Please tell me directly. Your Highness is truly intelligent, to be able to see through my thoughts in an instant. I'm impressed." Leng Shiqi smiled. "I'm just curious about the goo worms on Your Highness." Goo worm. Princess Carol was dazed at first, but then her expression turned gloomy. For people who cultivated goo techniques, goo worms were their second lives. If they nurtured a powerful goo worm suitable for themselves, their battle strength would increase greatly. Similarly, if they lost their goo worms, their battle strength would decrease greatly. Thus, people who cultivated goo techniques placed great importance on their goo worms. This was like a sword cultivator's sword. They couldn't allow others to covet it. At the same time, she had some doubts. Although she had only fought with Leng Shiqi once, she could sense that Leng Shiqi cultivated a cold-in cultivation method. Then what did he need goo worms for? Thus she asked, "Your Excellency doesn't cultivate goo techniques. What do you need goo worms for?" Leng Shiqi wasn't willing to answer and said coldly, "Your Highness, you only need to answer whether I agree or not." You. Princess Carol had never suffered such humiliation before. She was about to speak when Leng Shiqi spoke first. "I only want 10 spirit-devouring goo worms, and those goo worms that can turn into wings. With these, I can guarantee that I will immediately leave Zhulu country, and the news of you being Mo Huisho will be kept forever." "What did you say?" Princess Carol spat out these words one by one. Not to mention how precious those spirit-devouring goo were, and how hard it was for her to nurture them. There was also that goo worm that could turn into wings. It was the soaring sky goo that the princess had spent a large amount of resources to exchange for. She had only used it once. How could she give it to someone else? Moreover, even if she gave it to him, how could she be sure that he wasn't lying to her? At this time, Leng Shiqi saw that she was deep in thought and continued, I have to remind your highness that you don't have much time. Hearing this, Princess Carol clenched her fists tightly. She knew that her time was precious. She had already been delayed for a while, and her spirit horse had died. If she didn't hurry to Gushan Peak now, her mother would really be in danger. Suddenly, she realized that she seemed to have experienced this situation before. She recalled that she had also met a mysterious person outside Lanqi City, who was also at the late stage of Spirit Vein Realm. He had also used information to threaten her. Princess Carol couldn't help but show some suspicion. Were there too many mysterious people in this world, or was she so unlucky to always meet such people? Or could it be that there was no connection between the two of them? She didn't forget that she had once handed over the 10,000 spirit-devouring goo technique in Lanqi City. Now someone was asking for goo worms from her. This was too much of a coincidence. However, these two people's cultivation methods were completely different. They were even polar opposites, so it was impossible for them to be the same person. Lung Shiqi saw the suspicion in Princess Carol's eyes and his heart tightened. He was afraid that she would guess something, so he coldly snorted and said, "Princess Carol, Your Highness, you still need to think carefully." It seems that Your Highness still needs to consider it slowly. Then I'll go to the post house in King City. I believe that the Dark Thunder Guards should be more generous. Princess Carol instantly collected all her thoughts. She looked slightly flustered and hurriedly shouted, "Wait! I can agree to your conditions, but how can you guarantee that you won't leak it out? This one has always been a man of his word. Or rather, everyone in our organization is a man of his word. I think Your Highness should have experienced it in Lanqi City." Lung Shiqi was full of nonsense and forced himself to come up with an organization. Princess Carol was shocked. He really is in cahoots with the person who stopped me in Lanqi City. However, she believed it because after the last transaction, she had indeed successfully escaped from the Western Desolate Province. After hesitating for a while, she said, "I can give you goo worms, but I have a condition." Chapter 370. The reason why Lung Shiqi came up with this organization was actually a little helpless, because he was always pulling wool from a sheep. And just now, Princess Carol had already begun to suspect him, so he simply made up an organization, which could not only cover up the lie, but also make Princess Carol feel more at ease giving him the goo worms. Hearing that Princess Carol still had conditions, he pretended to be displeased and said, "Let's hear it. Your Excellency wants to get the spirit-devouring goo and the soaring sky goo with just one mouth. The value of each of these goo worms is no less than a 5th-tier spirit weapon. Shouldn't Your Excellency take out something?" Lung Shiqi said coldly. "Your Highness, are you bargaining? On the other hand, I can slowly negotiate with Your Highness for an entire day, without any problems. However, Your Highness doesn't seem to have so much time." This time, Princess Kaluo smiled and said, "I knew you would say that. My condition is very simple. Right now, most of the experts in the Goo God Peak are not here. At most, there are a few Spirit Aperture Realm spirit cultivators guarding it. Your Excellency only needs to help me lure those people out. Of course, the more people you lure out, the better. As long as Your Excellency agrees, I can give you the spirit-devouring goo and the soaring sky goo now. After the matter is done, I can also give you a mind control goo." Hearing this, Lung Shiqi was really moved. He had personally experienced the power of the mind control goo, so he naturally thought of it. And he also guessed that Princess Carol probably wanted to sneak into the Goo God Peak to get something, but he couldn't easily believe her. "Princess Carol has the mind control goo? Not now, but when Your Excellency leads away the spirit cultivators on the Goo God Peak, there will be." Princess Carol chuckled. "With my insignificant cultivation base, how can I hold back several Spirit Aperture Realm experts? Your Highness, you must be joking. Your Excellency comes and goes like a ghost. I don't think this matter will be difficult for Your Excellency. Moreover, Your Excellency knows what the mind control goo is. As long as you can lure away the experts of the Goo God Peak for a period of time, you will be able to get it. You will make a lot of money." Lung Shiqi pondered for a moment. He calculated that he wouldn't lose anything in this deal. Moreover, it wouldn't be troublesome to lure those experts away. He nodded and said, "Deal." Next, Princess Ka Luo straightforwardly took out 10 spirit-devouring goo and over 100 soaring sky goo, saying, "I believe you are a man of your words. Let's go to Gushan Peak now. To be able to travel together with your highness, it is the blessing of 3 lifetimes. Unfortunately, I am used to traveling alone, so it is better for us to go our separate ways. Your highness only needs to hide near Gushan Peak and wait for the right time." Okay, after the matter is done, let's meet at the pool 10 miles west of the Goo God Peak. After saying that, Princess Carol's spiritual power surged and she quickly left. Lung Shiqi looked at Princess Carol's back. After a while, he rushed to the Goo God Peak from another direction. This place was not very far from the Goo God Peak, less than 20 miles away. Lung Shiqi used the ghost spring steps and soon arrived near the mountain gate. He used the white eye to avoid Princess Carol, and knew that she was quietly hiding in the dark. Lung Shiqi quietly entered the Goo God Peak again, preparing to lure out the experts. But he didn't know that after Princess Carol quietly waited for a while, she sneered and then left at an even faster speed. After Lung Shiqi entered the Goo God Peak, he used the white eye and quickly found a person's aura. That person was Zhaoying. And this person was the key to Lung Shiqi luring out the experts of the Goo God Peak. At this moment, Zhaoying had just walked out of a palace. This was the place where the sound transmission formation was set up. He used the sound transmission formation to inform the King City branch about the strange disciple that he encountered. The higher-ups of the Goo God sect were in the King City. He believed that there would be a result soon. However, at this moment, an evil ghost figure floated away. Zhao Ying's expression changed slightly. He was about to chase after it, but he stopped in an instant. He thought to himself, still want to play this trick of luring the tiger away from the mountain. However, after hesitating for a moment, he still chased after it. After about half an incense stick's time, a person wearing a chaotic mask appeared. He quickly walked to the hall where the sound transmission formation was placed. However, when he reached the door, a sudden change occurred. A dense group of goo worms suddenly drilled out from the ground. They gathered together to form a human figure. Then, with a flash of light, a person suddenly appeared. It was Zhaoying, who was supposed to leave. As soon as he appeared, he laughed sinisterly. There is a way to heaven but you don't walk. There is no door to hell but you break in. You have already run away, but you still dare to come back and cause trouble. Let me beat you up and see what kind of trash you are." Lung Shiqi immediately put on a shocked posture. Why are you here? You dare to attack me? Do you know who I am? Sneaky. Even if your identity is extraordinary, I am still performing the duties of the sect. I am reasonable no matter what you say. After Zhaoying finished speaking, he waved his hand. The goo worms flew up and formed a small insect cloud that spread out. Lung Shiqi immediately rose up from under his feet. His figure quickly rushed back. At the same time, he surged out a strange rhythm from his mouth, causing the insect cloud to pause and stay in the air. Do you think I will use this method if I know you can control the goo magic sound? Explode. Zhaoying shouted explosively. And then the cloud of insects that covered the sky suddenly exploded apart. Rolling colorful lights burst out, accompanied by an earth-shaking loud sound, resounding throughout the entire Goo God Peak. Buzz. Lung Shiqi formed a fist seal with his hands. Golden light flowed around his body and condensed into a huge golden seal in front of him, blocking the power of the explosion for him. This was another level 5 spiritual skill attached to the ultimate gold mystic yang skill, the ultimate gold breaking mountain seal. This was a spiritual skill that had both offensive and defensive capabilities. However, this ultimate gold breaking mountain seal could not completely block the power of the explosion. Lung Shiqi could only retreat and erect an ice wall around his body to be safe. Zhaoying saw that such a powerful explosion did not injure Lung Shiqi, a spirit pulse realm cultivator, and his face was a little embarrassed. He roared. You are not using the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique at all. You are indeed a spy. Leng Shiqi ignored him and turned to run. Zhao Ying shouted fiercely. Run? Such a big movement has attracted all the disciples in the Gu God Peak. Let's see if you can still go to heaven or earth. He was right. The moment the insect cloud exploded, all the disciples of the Gu God sect rushed over, including 3 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators, and more than 10 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators. There were also hundreds of disciples below the 4th level of Sky Human Realm. However, Leng Shiqi was secretly smiling. This was the result he wanted. Zhao Ying's actions had saved him a lot of effort. Chapter 371. Today the Gu God Peak was unusually lively. From dozens of Sky Realm experts to hundreds of low-level disciples, they were all looking for a single person. In the end, the sky was dark, but they couldn't even find a shadow. At this time, 4 Spirit Aperture Realm experts were gathered together, including Zhao Ying and Cheng Bai. Zhao Ying's face was extremely ugly. After he fought with Leng Shiqi quickly got rid of him and sank into the ground. He also used the Byakugan and the system map to avoid all the Gu God sect disciples. So, after a long time, no one could find him. At this time, there was a sudden sound at the foot of the mountain. Found him, found him. He is there, quickly informed the elders. Zhao Ying and the other 3 heard this and rushed over. Not long after, they saw Leng Shiqi being blocked by dozens of Gu God sect disciples. However, there were only a few Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators among these disciples, so they were not in a hurry to make a move. Leng Shiqi saw Zhao Ying and the others rushing over and sneered. Oh, you guys are quite fast, but do you think you can stop me with just these trash? Leng Shiqi waved his arm, and an endless amount of demonic chi spread out, covering a radius of dozens of feet. Zhao Ying said anxiously. Not good, he is going to run again. Cheng Bai, who was standing beside him, flicked out a few goo worms. Those goo worms kept spinning in the air, and stirred up a strong wind. The strong wind blew away the demonic chi in an instant, but Leng Shiqi's figure was already gone. Damn it! Zhao Ying said angrily. He suddenly squatted down and inserted his arms deep into the ground. Immediately, goo worms poured into the ground. He must be hiding down there. Watch me pull him out. Hundreds of goo worms drilled into the ground. These goo worms seemed to be suitable for living underground, and their speed was very fast. These goo worms kept spreading underground. Zhao Ying closed his eyes and carefully sensed the information sent back by the goo worms. A few dozen breaths later, his eyes widened and a hint of joy appeared on his face. He shouted, Still want to hide? Come out. Zhao Ying raised his arms, and the ground began to tremble slightly. A huge gully was created on the ground. The ravine continued to extend until it was 300 to 400 feet away. Then Leng Shiqi's figure was forced out. Leng Shiqi said in a surprised but dismissive tone, You have some skills, but it's still useless. I'll take my leave. Then, he used the ghostly spring steps with all his might to escape. Leng Shiqi, who had already opened the spirit veins in his legs, was much faster than before. In the blink of an eye, only a blurry figure could be seen. Chase. Zhao Ying ordered. He lifted his foot and was about to give chase. However, Cheng Bai, who was beside him, stopped him. He's already used the tactic of luring the tiger away from the mountain twice. It's hard to say if this isn't the 3rd time. If we all go out, there will only be 5 people guarding the important places of Gushan Peak. The other 2 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators also nodded. However, Zhao Ying was already on top of his head. He said, What are you afraid of? His methods are indeed strange, but his cultivation is only at the Spirit Aperture Realm. As long as we restrict him, I can kill him in one move. This person stole the goo worm, and wanted to destroy the sound transmission array. He must have been sent by the main combat sect. If we kill him, it will be a great merit. Even if there's an accident, I, Zhao Ying, will take responsibility. Cheng Bai and the other 2 looked at each other. Since someone had taken the initiative to take responsibility, they had nothing to say. Just as Zhao Ying said, killing Leng Shiqi could be considered a great merit. They immediately agreed and chased after him with Zhao Ying. Leng Shiqi's speed was indeed fast, even faster than the 4 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators. However, his goal was not to escape now, but to lure them out. Therefore, Leng Shiqi deliberately slowed down a little, maintaining the same speed as Xiaoying and the others. Gradually, Leng Shiqi led dozens of Gushin sect masters across the mountain gate of Gushin Peak. However, he was surprised to find that he did not see Princess Carol in the field of vision of his Byakugan. It was reasonable to say that she should be lurking near Gushin Peak, ready to go up the mountain at any time. Leng Shiqi secretly guessed that maybe Princess Carol was waiting for an opportunity on the other side of Gushin Peak. He did not care too much and continued to run forward with dozens of people behind him. About an hour later, Leng Shiqi and others had already left Gushin Peak for some distance. He was about to get rid of Xiaoying and the others completely, and then go to the pool mentioned by Princess Carol. But an accident happened. A few miles away, dozens of Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators suddenly appeared. What shocked him the most was that there were oneness of heaven and man, and several Spirit Astral Realm cultivators among them. As for the rest, they were all in Spirit Aperture Realm and Spirit Pulse Realm. And the leader of oneness of heaven and man was Prince Heli. Seeing this scene, Leng Shiqi was shocked, but he soon realized that he had been fooled by Princess Carol. Princess Carol did not come to Gushin Peak to get anything at all. Her purpose was to draw out the masters of Gushin Peak. But she met Leng Shiqi on the way, so she left the dangerous task to him. Leng Shiqi also secretly hated himself for having a preconceived idea. He subconsciously thought that Princess Carol came to Gushin Peak to get something or meet someone, so he did not think too much about it. He secretly smiled bitterly. He did not expect that the sheep he had been collecting wool from had schemed against him. Leng Shiqi could only blame himself for being a little careless and falling into this trap, because he was too greedy for the mind-controlling insect. But fortunately, his life was not in danger, and he could take this opportunity to see what the jingoists were up to. Leng Shiqi deliberately slowed down at this time, pretending that his spiritual power was exhausted. Seeing this, Xiaoying immediately showed a crazy smile. When they were about to approach Leng Shiqi's figure directly disappeared into the ground. Xiaoying sneered, still using such a low-level method. Just as he was about to pull out Leng Shiqi, a huge aura like flowing fire rushed over. Zhao Ying's expression changed slightly. He looked over and saw dozens of people in black rushing over quickly. The person in the lead was in oneness of heaven and man. Before that person even got close, Xiaoying and the others dared to feel that blazing killing intent. Those people were coming for them. Xiaoying and the other 3 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators immediately leaned together. They all looked dignified. The other party obviously came with ill intentions, but they foolishly ran out of Gushin Peak and lost the protection of the sect protecting array. This was not luring the tiger away from the mountain. It was clearly luring the snake out of its hole. Chapter 372. Soon under the night sky, the 2 groups of people confronted each other. The number of people in the 2 groups was about the same, and they were all spirit cultivators in the celestial realm. However, the gap between them was huge. There were only 4 Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators in the Gu God sect, and the rest were in the Spirit Pulse realm. However, the other side had masters in the Unity of Heaven and Man realm and Gang Spirit realm. Just these few people could easily kill dozens of people in the Gu God sect. Xiaoying and the other 3 people's expressions had already sunk to the bottom. They all knew that they had been fooled. The purpose of the other side was to lure them out of the Gu God Peak, and then destroy them in one fell swoop. As long as these spirit cultivators in the celestial realm were killed, the low-level disciples in the Gu God Peak would be a group of lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Zhao Ying's face was not only gloomy but also hot. If he had not been so impulsive, they would not have come out in full force. At this moment, he really hated Leng Shiqi and himself. Zhao whispered, "I will stop them. You guys go back to the Gu God Peak and open the sect protection array." Since he had made such a serious mistake, he would take the corresponding responsibility. Although his voice was low, it was still heard by Prince Heli. However, he was masked at this time, so the people in the Gu God sect did not know his identity. Prince Heli suppressed his voice and said, "Ridiculous, you want to stop me? Duh." He punched out, and the violent fist force attracted a trace of the power of heaven and earth. It turned into a flame python that lit up the night sky and swept over with killing intent. "Go!" Zhaoying shouted, and countless goo worms suddenly drilled out of his body. Those goo worms did not fly out, but gnawed at his own flesh and blood. And his aura was constantly rising. He was sacrificing his own flesh and blood in exchange for great power. Prince Heli said disdainfully, "Insignificant skill." Unfortunately, no matter how strong Zhao Ying's aura was, he was still in the spirit aperture realm. Facing the flame python, he did not even have a chance to attack before he was ruthlessly swallowed up. In an instant, he died without a complete corpse. The unity of heaven and man realm was so powerful. Chungbai's group and the remaining spirit pulse stage disciples all had ashen faces. It was as if they could already see their miserable deaths. However, they would definitely not sit still and wait for death. Everyone burst forth with the fastest speed in their lives, wanting to escape from this place. At this moment, after Leng Shiqi sank into the ground, he continued to dive. He knew that there would definitely be a fight above. The fight between the masters of the unity of heaven and man realm would definitely be earth-shattering. He was afraid that he would be affected. At the same time, he kept his supercilious eye open to observe the situation above him. When he saw Zhaoying being killed in one move, his heart suddenly quivered. At this point, he guessed that the princess consort's faction had already secretly joined forces with the pro-war faction. Perhaps when Wang Fei roped in the Dark Thunder Guards, they were already mixed together. Now that he thought about it, the scene of the three parties gathering at the courier station that day, those people were all best actors. This was especially true for Prince Heli. Although he looked like a rough and burly man, he was extremely meticulous on the inside. He was also very good at acting, which was really admirable. When Prince Heli saw that Chungbei and the others were about to escape, he laughed maniacally. "Today none of you will be leaving." He threw out a few punches, instantly breaking mountains and rivers. Blazing fists soared into the sky. Several flame pythons intertwined under the night sky, as if they were going to tear apart the night sky. Facing Prince Heli, Chungbei and the others had no resistance at all. Just as they were about to be swallowed by the flame pythons, a strange goo worm the size of a head suddenly appeared between the two. The goo worm was as weak as an ant in front of the flame pythons, but it was this small goo worm that took the initiative to fly into the flame pythons. Even more amazing was that this goo worm was like a black hole. Before it even touched the flame pythons, it was torn apart and finally completely swallowed. An insignificant goo worm actually swallowed Prince Heli's full force attack. Chungbei and the others were first stunned, but when they recognized the goo worm, they all turned to joy. Prince Heli's expression became serious. "This is the spirit-devouring goo." "No, it's the spirit-devouring goo king." "That's right, it's the spirit-devouring goo king." A cold voice came from the sky. Then, the whole sky suddenly buzzed loudly. Layers of goo worms formed a bug cloud that covered the sky in the blink of an eye. Among them, dozens of figures descended from the sky. The leader was the leader of the Gu God sect, Sang Hitong. These people were the top experts of the Gu God sect who had sneaked into the king city from the beginning. Looking carefully, other than Sang Hitong, who was at the unity of heaven and man realm, the great elder of the Gu God sect was also there. His cultivation was also at the unity of heaven and man realm. In addition, there were several spirit astral realm cultivators, a dozen spirit aperture realm cultivators, and the rest were spirit pulse realm cultivators. In addition to Chungbei and the others, there were more than 100 experts in the Gu God sect. Just in terms of fighting strength, the Gu God sect had almost twice as many people as Prince Heli. Leng Shiqi, who was hiding below, was shocked when he saw this scene. Looking at the current situation, the leader of the Gu God sect, Sang Hitong, clearly knew about Prince Heli's plan to lure the snake out of its hole. Sang Hitong was a young man with a white face and no beard. He looked harmless. At this moment, he had a cold smile on his face. Prince Heli as a prince, You don't dare to show your true face. You are a disgrace to your status as a prince." Prince Heli didn't say anything. He took off the black mask on his head and showed his true face. At the moment Sang and Tong appeared here, he knew that they'd actually been tricked. Prince Heli had joined hands with the princess consort and the Dark Thunder Guards to put on a show. They wanted to eliminate the low-level disciples of the Gugod sect and destroy the Gugod Peak, so that Sang and Tong would lose their support. Therefore, they had a plan to lure the snake out of its hole. Unfortunately, they were checkmated by Sang He Tong. Sang He Tong laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha, Heli, you guys tried so hard to cut off my escape route, but you didn't know that I was also luring the snake out of its hole. I purposely moved more than 80% of the experts into the King City. You thought that you were aware of it, but in fact, I purposely let you know. Otherwise, how could you leave the city so easily? As long as we kill you, the prince and the experts, what ability does your main fighting faction have to fight for the throne with us?" Prince Heli and the spirit cultivators behind him felt as if a mountain was pressing down on their hearts. Just as Sang He Tong said, they were going to die here tonight. However, Prince Heli naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death. He bellowed, "Sang He Tong, even if you are stronger, do you think it will be so easy to kill me? Even if I die, I will drag you down with me." Sang He Tong tilted his head and laughed. "Then let's try." With that, he moved his hands and a spider web that was dozens of meters long appeared in the air. Each spider web was covered with layers of goo worms. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.